Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, March 1st of 2022 already. And I've told you how I've been doing alternating level 1 and level 2 weeks. Last week I did level 2, and it was all about solar consciousness, the life cycle of a star. And spoiler alert, you becoming part of star and solar consciousness. This presentation for today is from level 1, and it is lesson 7, and it actually dovetails, Billy is entering very nicely, with everything that I taught about last week, because that is the way that I wrote this curriculum. So we're doing level 1 stuff today, and this lesson is called The Rainbow Journey. This, first I should have an example of a prism. Not prison, but prism. I'm going to draw it for you on the whiteboard. A prism, and let me just go to my face, is, this triangular glass object. Oh, wait. Let's draw this much better. Sometimes you can tell how difficult it is to control this digital pen. Good. Triangular glass object that, let's pretend that this is, here we go, Angela is entering. I knew people would just be joining in, maybe just a little bit late. This is white light that is coming into the prism. And it is split up into its constituent elements. Here is red, and then the red will flow out in this direction. I can go through all of them. Orange, and of course these are not perfect waveforms that I'm drawing with my wiggly digital pen. It's not that easy to make it work, but this is a generalized idea of how this works. And this absolutely relates to our lesson and what we're learning. So I'll go through the challenge of making all of the colors, the entire Rojibiv, because this is the color recipe that derives from our sun star that is in the sky. Okay, that is a very loosely drawn rainbow prism. The idea is, now I'll take a different color entirely. And hold on one moment while I just, you know me, and when I get going, I have to drink a little something. Light, when it is traveling like this. Well, first of all, in this picture, we have air. Like, light is actually traveling through air over here. This is not the vacuum of space. But in this picture, light is traveling through here, and this is white light, unified consciousness, unified, all together, coherent. And it is traveling at a particular rate or speed. And then as it encounters this material object, the light changes speed. This is the theme of what you want to think about today as I start to go through and show you. Hello, welcome everybody who's tuned in. As I start to show you, let me do share screen to some pictures. Like this picture here and this picture here, those are good examples of it. All of the different layers of your being and these various colors and the shapes that they make, the idea is that you are analogous to that triangular crystalline structure that, let's see if I can get an annotation. Oops, stop share. Clearly I didn't want that to happen. Go back to annotation. As this unified white light, oh, come on, do a thing, here we go. I promise I won't get frustrated with my pen. No, that just was not what I wanted at all. Now it's not working right. Hold on a second. What do I have to do to make it work right? Gosh, boy, oh boy. Okay, let's see if I can do it now. No, still not working. Gonna try it again, guys, and not gonna have any problems. Good. Annotate and draw. Here is light. Good. Coming in through the top of your crown. All of this is an analogy. So please do not be too literal, because I know I focus a lot and I say light is coming in through here and it's circulating, through all of your chakras like this. And then of course, going back up your spine like this. That is a simplification, and we do this for shorthand, just like me drawing the time vortex in cross section. But actually, let's say these are little cells of the body that I am magnifying in my drawing for you. Beams of white light come down into every single cell of your body. So it's not just that it comes down into your head and then circulates through the rest of your body. Literally, that white light comes into the totality of who and what you are, into every cell of your body. And it actually comes in through the nucleus, through the singularity rather, that is at the center of each one of your somatic cells. That is where your DNA is housed. It is in the nucleus of each cell. So when I'm drawing this white light coming in through here, this is a non-literal poetic analogy of the light entering into the totality of your body system. And similarly, when I highlight something like the red chakra of your body here, I'm not just talking about the area of your pelvis and your legs. I'm really talking about every part of you that is the red or physicality or densest area, structural area of your body, of your presence. So, because I often use the analogy of like water filling up in a glass. This is not wine, I promise you. It is electrolyte water. Water filling up in a glass. So here would be the red chakra down here. And as we pour more water into the glass, then we go all the way up to violet. But that doesn't mean that only your pelvis and your legs are the red chakra. No, that is a simplification, okay? So now in this class, we're starting to get into more sophisticated understandings, and you are understanding or comprehending rather that I use a lot of shorthand in order to be able to show this, but really all of your physical matter of your body is the red zone, all right? And every single one of your individual somatic cells has an entire chakra system in it. So you have every layer from Roy G. Biv in every single cell. And at the center of the cell is where you have the singularity, every single cell. So you don't just have one singularity. Let's go. Let me just show you my entire, both of these things. If I use the annotation, I have to get it like right away. Here is one central convergence point. Get my thing here. That is an accurate drawing that shows all of these chakras converging in one place, which is roughly the heart of this figure. That is accurate. This is also accurate, showing a convergence point, the center of your head, throat, heart, solar plexus, and in your pelvis where your red and orange meet together. So red and orange meet together, and violet and indigo also meet together in the same overlapping place. This shows things kind of spread out and deconstructed. It is accurate. This shows everything on the right here squashed together and not deconstructed, and it is also accurate. The truth is, and in part 2 of this teaching, you will find out that there's only one singularity. This convergence point of all of these stretched fabrics of reality is the singularity, and there is only one of it. So there's one of it there, and there's one of it there, there. There is also one singularity at the center of every single one of your somatic cells, and your cells, there are trillions of them. So if I draw this over here, this is like a membrane, a flat membrane, that then we have the infinitely heavy bowling ball of consciousness that stretches that membrane, and it stretches it into this infinite convergence point. That is the singularity. And of course, you have another membrane here with the heavy bowling ball that is stretching it inward there. And what you have are these multiple layers of stretchedness, representing different layers of density that are all layers of your being. This teaching is called the Rainbow Journey. I know that might sound a little bit like, I don't know, floofy, like the rainbow connection, like something made for children. This is not floofy. This is actually very deep stuff that I'm talking about here. The example of a prism and the refraction of light. So as light enters into that prismatic structure, light is refracted, meaning it is split up into its recipe. So you could imagine all of these light waves that are together, moving together, moving together, moving together, and that makes up the recipe of white light. But when it enters into that prismatic structure, the light is bent at slightly different speeds or rates, and then is split up or refracted into its different layers. It's exactly like if you took a cake and you're like, okay, I'm going to take the cakeliness of cake, and then I'm going to divide up all of the aspects of the recipe. I'm going to take all of the flour and put it over here. I'm going to take all of the sugar and put it over here. I'm going to take all of the eggs and put it over here. And then over here is where I put all the strawberries, and here's where I put the vanilla, the dash of vanilla at the top. Each one of those recipes or layers of ingredient is analogous to the layers of beingness in your body. But when you perceive white light, unity consciousness, the consciousness that flows from the sun star in the sky and the entire stellar network, you are perceiving all of those ingredients coming together as the beautiful cake, quote unquote, of consciousness. As an aside, although the sun from our sun star is the light from our sun star is yellow-green. Let me just fix that in my notes, because you know I do send out the lecture notes. Our eyes are calibrated to interpret that color as white. So we can use this picture right here as an example. If you really look at the color of the wall behind me, that's kind of like a grayish, yellowish, greenish color due to the various different light sources that are in my room and other things. Like, it's not just pure blinding white light. Do you understand it? So, but when you look at the totality of my face on this screen, you interpret with your system of interpretation and perception, you read that as white. You're like, okay, I'm calibrating to that as white, even though technically if you squint your eyes, you're like, well, that's actually kind of a grayish, greenish, almost yellowish, purplish kind of color up there. It's not pure white. Or even on my dress, if you look at the color of this right here, you're like, that's actually kind of a grayish, you know, purplish color if I were just to be totally literal about it. More people are tuning in, or maybe they're hopping in and out. Hold on a moment. So our eyes work much like a camera. If you've ever used a camera with white balance, what happens with a camera with white balance is you have to hold up a sheet of white paper and then press the white balance button, and it calibrates to that white paper as white, and then interprets all other color structures based upon that as white. And of course, humans created cameras that mimic or are similar to what our eyes and perception system are doing all the time. So your eyes do this all the time. It is how you can accommodate different light contexts. Like in my room right now, it's not that well lit. It's a little bit shadowy, so that way you can see my face up here. But if we went out into the direct sunlight, the color of white that is on a white wall or a white piece of paper would be a different color. And we would say, that's white, and then everything else is this color based upon that. So we have a calibration system is what I'm trying to say. The light from our sun is actually not pure white. It is actually in the yellowish greenish level of the spectrum. But because we live on this world, in this planet, we are emanations of this particular sun star. We are calibrated to it. We say that color recipe coming from that star, this spectrum, is white light. That is the white light of pure consciousness, even though it does have characteristics, unique qualities, a unique signature that we categorize or use as our foundation calibration of the understanding that that is white light. The bending of light as light changes shape, going through different densities of media. So light can be bent. In my little drawing over here, we've got light coming through into this prismatic structure. Light is coming through. Light hits something that is a more dense level of materiality, and then it is bent. Light can be, the trajectory of light can be changed. That's the direction that it's moving and its speed. Both the speed and direction of light can be changed. Light can be acted upon. When light hits glass, it goes from traveling through the air, which is a not very dense realm, into a solid. This is the same as when light hits a liquid. That's why if you've ever done that little science experiment where you put a pencil into a glass of water and it looks like the pencil is broken because you see first the visual spectrum that is moving in through the air, then you see as it's moving through the water and it looks like it's kind of shifted to one side. It is moving at a different rate through the density of the medium of water. So moving through glass, moving through water, moving through something that has a lensing effect. The change of speed is what causes light to bend. Every time I say this in class, you're getting it now. You can, the words light and the words consciousness or awareness are interchangeable in my teaching. Light changes speed as it enters into different levels of density or materiality. Consciousness changes speed as it enters into different levels of materiality or density. Question from Billy: how does something that refracts light come into existence? Imagination, thought, idea, attention? Are you asking about ourselves as objects of refraction? Are you asking about the actual prismatic structure of glass? Just, I would love to answer you fully. I need more of an understanding, comprehension of the direction from which your question even originates from. How does...
Sure. Hi, Aurora.
Good.
I'm just asking, how does anything that refracts light come to be? Like, how does anything first show up?
Matter is, thank you for your question, first of all. And it's a very good, like, basic chicken and egg question. Matter is slowed down light. So this prismatic structure, or you as the anthropomorphic form, are light, but you are light that has, I say, the privilege, the opportunity to experience what it is like to be going slower than the speed of light. So the light that is falling upon my face and reflecting onto the camera of the computer screen is moving at roughly 186,000 miles per second. But the matter of my face is light that is moving more slowly than that speed of light. And it has coalesced and densified and come together into what we describe as the denser form of reality experience known as matter. Everything about our five senses realm is actually an interplay of these two different types of density, the non-dense or less dense levels of pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure light energy, pure heat energy, and let's say contrasted with, complementary to, everything that is a denser physicality structure. And when I show these pictures, these images over here, this shows, you see your anthropomorphic form that has a head and two arms and two legs. That outline structure is the matter that is the densified level of light that is the end result of the bending and refraction of the light of all of these other levels. If you did not have an object that was there to be able to cause this to, let's say, interact or have a causality structure with light, the light would simply continue onward on its infinite journey. So here's the sun, which is a portal of consciousness. Here's light coming out from the sun. These are possibilities and probabilities. They would go on endlessly as the arrow of time, except they hit a planetary structure that I've joked about. We are a rocky planet, rock music, the third rock from the sun, you know, that Jimi Hendrix song. But we are solid matter as opposed to gas. Do you understand? Like Saturn and Jupiter are gas planets. So light going into them and interacting with them interacts with a less dense realm. But we living here, we are in the densification level that is the third dimensional reality. And I make a huge distinction between the third dimension as in a box and an XYZ axis form that we can occupy, as opposed to the modern parlance of people talking about the 3D world, meaning the mundane world, or a level of particular density experience. Because I really find that whole lexicon and approach and way of speaking to be very confusing and contravening to the impeccability of the language of math. So we're in a third dimensional reality structure. We live in a dense third dimensional level being. Light comes from a less dense realm, comes to our planet, and begins to circulate or interact through this density level. as opposed to merely going on its journey. And so what a real question is, when I said chicken and egg, so what came first? Like, how did this matter stuff happen? How did it coalesce? How can there be a thing here for light to even be stopped on its form and interact with? There is like a willpower or a causality structure, similar to what I've described, in the sense of how was the matter of your beingness brought into being? I'm talking about gestation within a body's womb, within, like, you know, a personhood, that I describe it.
Or like,
yeah,
moment of conception.
Yeah, that, and I describe conception and gestation also as being a quantum event, not merely a biological event, that you as non-embodied consciousness observership stuck yourself down into dimensionality. Like, imagine my hand is going down into a cotton candy machine, and my hand is the skeleton of potentiality and the you-ness of you before you're clothed in any type of matter. And what you did was you moved yourself around in this potentiality field, creating matter. Again, I say this all the time, you're not just made out of the pickles and ice cream that your mom ate when she had pregnancy cravings about you. Yes, you're actually manifested matter, that your body is the matter that you manifested as a higher dimensional thought form. You thought your body into being. And then, of course, pieces of pickles and ice cream did come and assemble together in order to actually make molecular structure as raw elements. But I think about it much more in the sense of the way that we create quantum observership, as I have described in the past, like the wall behind me. Right now, we're giving birth to and gestating the wall behind me as a collective consciousness. I know, it's like, ow, like a wall is coming out. Like, we can make all sorts of jokes about the pain of childbirth, like a giant wall coming out of you. But no, it comes out of your mind from a level of potentiality that is the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is a bakery of pure waveforms, like a sea of batter. So what's behind me is just potentialities, a sea of batter, and it is the ovens in front of our eyes in terms of observership that actually bakes that batter into the cake of reality. We all did this, even though I'm a walk-in, I didn't do it, but I do it with my body to uphold and continue this body that was gestated. But when you gestated in the womb, what you really did as a non-embodied, pure spiritual presence was to use observership to manifest matter, and the matter is your cellular structure. So it's so much more than just a biological accident, like sperm meets egg and then kapow, a baby is born. It's a very, I think, simplistic way of looking at conception that takes away so much of the supernatural, miraculous unlikelihood of what is actually happening. What actually happened was a sea of waveforms existed, of potential futures that you as non-embodied consciousness observer observed and baked into reality using the ovens in front of your eyes that literally became a skeleton, a heart, a skin envelope, a body that you can be in, and then successfully brought it to term in partnership with your mother, and then successfully entered into this reality. That matters also because we're talking all about how light is born, and how basically you're pure light. Each one of us is pure light, and you have been birthed into reality. Stars are portals in the sky. Hi, Lucy, so good to see you, dear. And what stars are doing is constantly giving birth to these photons or potentialities or tiny points of consciousness that are coming through the doorway that is the singularity at the center of every star. So this is part of what's in my notes. Each star is like a pinpoint of consciousness that is part of a larger neurological system. Each star has at its center a singularity, the singularity. I could say a doorway to infinity. The planet that we're in has a doorway to infinity. I'm going to draw this because it will make it easier for me to talk about. Go to the whiteboard. When I talk about the singularity, what I'm talking about is, here I'm drawing, these toroidal energy fields. And then here is a dot at the center. And of course, we have complementary toroidal energy fields that are at 90 degrees. That's what all of my chakra sculptures are all about. But right now, focus on this part right here, which is that infinitely stretched area. So first I'll draw something that's the sun. This is this giant, red body here is the sun. And this toroidal structure around the sun is called the heliosphere. And it's a measurable or observable thing that exists in physical reality, but also overlaps in consciousness reality. That area right here is a doorway. Wait, I gotta choose a better color. There's a doorway at the center of the sun, and that doorway goes to infinity. Now I'm going to show, this is my shorthand for a dotted line means goes to, right? A dotted line, doorway opens up to infinity. That's a long hallway that goes to infinity. But here's another star with another doorway, and this doorway also opens up to infinity. And then here's another doorway, and that doorway also opens up to infinity. So each one of these, I'll go back to the star color. This is a star, and this is a star, and we already went through, this is the sun, that's a star. Multiple different portals or points of consciousness that all contain within them a doorway to infinity. And what they are doing is giving birth to consciousness. Let's just choose a consciousness color, purple. Purple consciousness is flowing down this hallway and then out of this doorway to infinity, and then over to here to the earth where we are experiencing it. Consciousness is flowing outward from the infinity point through all of these doorways. And our planet, we'll get a planetary color. Planet Earth is blue. That's why I always choose blue. Planet color blue is also has a doorway to infinity because the Earth has a magnetosphere that is also this toroidal shape. And it is a magnetic field, and it is part of this electromagnetic phenomenon that is partially physical and partially consciousness based. And it's shaped exactly like a chakra structure. So our sun has a singularity or doorway at its center, and our planetary structure also has a singularity or doorway at its center. And these doorways to infinity are birth canals, is a good way of saying it, maybe, analogous to the doorway, the stargate, the opening that consciousness comes through. So big deepness here is that you are the potentiality of pure light. Light equals consciousness. You are a light being, you are a consciousness being before you ever became a matter being. And matter has as its root word the word mother. Matter, the material world, matter, mother, mama. Mama, we're in mama right now. And the idea is that we are experiencing and gestating our consciousness in this level of density, and then eventually we get birthed into another level of beingness. So first we're birthed from sun-star portals into physicality bodies, and then as we gestate in our physicality bodies, we then are birthed into an even higher dimensional level of experience. Let me drink. I'll return to keep answering this question because it actually relates to it's a good question. It relates to everything that I'm going through in the formal presentation for today. The idea of where does matter come from? How consciousness on its journey. What are we doing here? I want to say what the F are we doing here? What are we doing here? And where are we going to? And where are we coming from? I'll keep on going with my notes, and then I'll keep on returning back to this. Oh yeah, I should show you the children of true humanity, but you know what? I've been showing you this. This is a good shorthand. So in the online lesson, I used a large picture that is the children of true humanity. Here I'm using this detail so that you can see it more where I'm wiggling my cursor. Basically, the idea is, so you have this black outline that is your anthropomorphic or human-shaped body. It is made of solidified light. Then you also have this area where I'm wiggling my cursor that is quote unquote outside of your epidermis, but then you can see it interpenetrates inside of your epidermis, and that is a sea of light. And that what you actually are is densified light within and holding form within a larger superstructure of less dense light that is also coherent. So everything that there is light that is moving at different rates. Your body is like the crystalline prismatic structure through which light, consciousness, energy is flowing and being cut up, split up, or refracted into these various rates in the sense of being able to make a multi-hued object that is the Roy G. Biv spectrum. You are a refractor of light. You are the epicenter of the torus, and you act as a prism, just as glass acts as a prism. And all of these toroidal shapes are bidirectional energy pathways, two-way streets. So if I go back to this, I use this properly so that I don't make my camera shake so much. Light coming in and light going out. Light enters into this apparatus from the higher dimensional, less dense realm. And then it goes through all of these different layers of being, which again happens on a cellular totality, holistic level, but I'm just showing it as a linear path. And that's not the end of the journey. It's a two-way street. That's information and light coming into, or quote unquote, down into, but then light energy awareness also turns right back around and spirals back up and goes up in this direction. It is a two-way superhighway of consciousness between yourself and the sun. And P.S., spoiler alert, you are the sun, you are the sun stars. So you are that which is emanating in the sky. You have emanated yourself into physicality being, and you are also sending yourself back in terms of all of the neurological stimuli, thought processes, and refined energy that you send back to the sun stars. There's a central ray of light or consciousness that comes into you. And that central ray of white light is, it is white light because it contains all of these rainbow layers added up together. It is unity consciousness. So our sun is an exemplar ambassador of unity consciousness. It is, like I said, it has its own unique energy signature. It is its own unique personhood or character. And it also is the end result of many, many, many multiple uniquenesses coming together. Just like when I talk about my Aurora collective. My collective is the music that is the end result of many, many, many unique individual energy signatures that all come together and make a cohesive whole. So the star, that's our sun, has its own unique energy signature because it has this much green and this much yellow and this many baritones and this many altos and this many tenors and this many sopranos singing in its choir. And it's a little bit different than the other stars that are out there. But when you join together all of the other stars that are out there, what you end up getting, like if you join together our sun plus Alpha Centauri plus the Pleiades plus all of the other almost uncountable number of stars that are also portals of consciousness and doorways to infinity that are out there, up there, what you get is that unified voice that is also unified white light consciousness. Let me grab this drink over here that I prepared for myself as everyone's tuning into our class and drink. Thank you for understanding. Patricia always says, you don't have to say thank you for understanding, like you're allowed to drink. Thank you for that permission. Because I need sustenance while I'm going on the marathon here. Bidirectional highway. God infinity consciousness flows into you from the source of unity consciousness. That's a big one. Let me drink. We're going to think about that one. God, which is unity consciousness, which is the totality personality of everything is added up together. The end result, white light of all of these colors adding up together from every single star system. So from all individual life that is on a particular planet, but there are life forms that live on Jupiter. Is there life on Mars? Yes, there's life on Mars, or there was life on Mars. I know I get silly when I start to break into song. Is there life on Uranus? It's Uranus. More silliness. Thank you for allowing me that. Is there life on these different levels of density throughout our solar system? The answer is, in an ideal, pristine world, yes. However, we have had many traumatic events and experiences that have destroyed some of the life or disrupted some of the life forms that are on the various different layers of being that are within our solar system. Our solar system has different levels of stretchiness of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. Once you start going with my class, you understand I always say this. Everybody talks about time, space, the fabric of time, space, the fabric of time, space. I'm like, yes, the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. Add in the consciousness because that is an absolutely essential variable or aspect of what's going on. The white light that flows from the galactic center. So this goes back to last week's class. Remember I talked all about the galactic center and how there is a doorway of consciousness there that emits light like a portal or signals or broadcast emissions to all of the sun stars that are in the sky, non-locally, meaning not from point A to point B in a line. If it did, that would take a very long time. If this is the galactic center, and this is where we live in terms of being on the outer edges of our galaxy, we live far from the galactic center. To understand, the galactic center is like the center of commerce, the downtown, the hub of everything. It's where everything is going on. We do not live there. We do not live in like whatever you would say, the city. We live far away. We do not live in a population dense area. You get it? Lots and lots and lots of stars are clustered around the galactic center. There's a giant supermassive black hole there. There's the center of intelligence. A lot is going on there. A lot of hustle bustle is going on there. We do not live there. We live all the way over here. We live on a rural 2-lane road that, like we don't even, get close to the downtown area. We're just bicycling around on a little dirt pathway all the way over here. The signals that come from the galactic center in terms of intelligence to where we are in the rural outlands do not travel merely in a line that is from point A to point B. If they did, by the time this neural impulse went from the brain at the center of our galaxy and the pure intelligence there to where we experience at the periphery, which is like the big toe of the galaxy, it would no longer be relevant. It would be like, yeah, the entire lifespan of our galaxy is over by the time that signal reaches us at the periphery. Signals are not sent in that very slow speed of light linear fashion. What happens is the fabric of time, space, and consciousness is folded so that the galactic center touches or is very close to our neighborhood. And we don't have to travel very far at all in order to get those signals. How is this done? It is done through the comprehension of what singularity or the singularity actually is. So this is the level 1 teaching. We did the level 2 teaching last week, but that's perfect like appetizer for what we're actually doing right now. And it has everything to do with strengthening your profound understanding of what singularity or the singularity or source or the source is. It's the 0th dimension, it's the source, it's the infinity point, it's the fabric of time, space, and consciousness stretched to an infinite amount of stretchiness and converging from every single different direction that it is possible to converge from into one place. And it's literally the only place that exists, and it's the primary source from where we all come from. So the intelligence that is coming from in through the words fail, galactic center, supermassive black hole over here on the hugely gravitational object that is holding all of these star presences together, that comes from the 0th dimension, infinity. It would accurately be described as God. It is God consciousness. It is a non-anthropomorphic, hugely abstract, hugely intelligent, hugely coherent. I could call it a force field, but it is a point, because force field is usually something that is larger than a point, but it is concentrated into a point, but it has a coherence, even though it is a point. That God consciousness flows into you from the source. It is unity consciousness, and it is the amalgamation or the end result of every single thing that's out here that's been split up into colors. White light, that primary ray, is really the primary thing or the only truth that actually exists. And I say I should say, it is the foundation truth of the primary truth. And then on top of that are other layers of experience and interpretation that are also valid, that include the idea of splitting up the cake of unity consciousness into its different levels of ingredients that are the recipe that make up the totality of light. And that's what all of these layers are that we see as the visible spectrum. That is what all of these layers are that we experience as non-physical light. So I make a big distinction here also between physical light, like you see rainbow colors, they're bouncing into your eyeballs and stimulating your retina. And then there is also the difference between that and non-physical light. So I have a non-physical light body. You guys do too. It is all around you. It generally, it extends, I have to make sure I don't knock things over when I stretch out my arms, at least an arm's length all around you, right? But sometimes even more, sometimes even greater. Your energy field can be so strong and so coherent, it can include a bubble of your whole entire house. It can include a bubble of your whole entire town or municipality. It can include your whole planet. It can include your whole sector of the solar system or sphere of interaction. It depends on how much, coherence you have, like how strong is your voice? How far does your voice travel? How far does the voice of your mind travel? So for right now, we're talking about the energy force field. That is the coherence field. That is the definition of you that holds the you-ness of you together. I know, sometimes words fail. Let's just go to a picture. This. Here you got over here, a central anthropomorphic form surrounded by an extremely large energy field. This energy field is even slightly larger than the outstretched anthropomorphic arms of this figure. One thing you will notice is that the red color, which is the physicality color, is the largest area or largest size of nested proportions, and all of the other chakras fit within that level or being of reality. And what that translates to is the truth that your physicality presence, like I'm touching my face right now, all of my other chakras or layers of more subtle body live or fit or nest within my physicality presence, my cellular presence, my body that I've got here, the body that was gestated through the process of matter manifestation in biological conception and gestation and birth. All of those layers of being that are my emotional, intellectual, heart, higher faculties, they all exist within the physical somatic cellular structure. So this is back to chicken and the egg, because I said, Billy, that I would circulate back around. You start off with this abstract armature that is the potentiality or skeleton, that is like an energy skeleton that is not even clothed in, sorry, notifications are coming in, not even clothed in matter or the potentialities of matter. Then you clothe yourself many, many, many layers, like the cotton candy machine. You go around and around and around, more cotton candy accretes or gets stuck on the outside of what is your skeleton that you're putting in there. And then at a certain point, you've got your arm covered in cotton candy, or you've got your spiritual armature covered in materiality. Part of that materiality is something, for example, like your pineal gland. It's a physical structure in your brain. You use it to then turn right back around and emanate more energy that is pure energy field. So you begin as a coherent energy field. You accrete matter all around you. Then that matter actually has a projective quality to it that then projects outward even more. So you also are using your matter to project reality and coalesce more matter around you. Big, 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 big. It's not just a simple answer of this thing came first and then this thing came second, because first you were no matter, then you were matter, but the matter that you created has the capacity to make more no matter. And then, of course, what you're doing with all of this is making it divine again and bringing all of this no matter back to the state of no matter or pure energy. I'm going to get into this too. This is about Isaac Newton and Mr. Einstein, how we view the physical world and duality. Remember, this is a level 1 teaching. So this also might be a bit of recap for something that you're familiar with if you're already in the advanced class. But the idea of duality, spirit versus matter. matter versus spirit, energy versus matter. The idea that you're like, I'm a spirit, I'm a non-physical presence, and I'm in my physical body. A lot of people feel this disconnect. I'm not judging anyone. There's no right and there's wrong. There's no right, rather, no wrong. There is just the truth of your journey, and your journey changes and unfolds and is continually redefined as you gain more perspective and as you gain more insight. Eventually, so initially there's the implanted bifurcation that comes from society that says your physicality body is different than your spirit body or your soul body or your pure energy body or your God body or your coherent light body, and that these two things are totally separate. And the idea also in the teaching is that at a certain point in the mechanical death of your body, like physicality body will die, but your spirit will fly onward. So people take some sense of a comfort of the separation of these two things. Like, I will take off my dirty sock, but my foot will remain and my foot will travel onward into the spirit world, you know, kind of looking at your body as this temporary object. And although it is temporal in terms of it is defined by the experience of moving through time, it is not necessarily a disposable object or something that is not valuable to you. It's very valuable to you. As I said, you created and coalesced this matter. You're not just here like on vacation using your matter for a little while and then like chucking it out the window, like, see your body, I'm getting out of here. Actually, you have the opportunity to raise that matter to the level of divine consciousness. And that I feel like that is the true journey of what we are doing. Never judging anyone who might have died, because when I talk about the time field and the vortex of time, each one of us has many, many, many game over, try again lives where you did not successfully raise the matter of your body upward on its continued journey of consciousness. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it doesn't mean that you're a demon of hell. And it doesn't mean that you're supposed to suffer, and you're going to die and be on the membrane of death and suffering. And I'm being very silly in my presentation here because I want to kind of make light of it. But that's not what I'm trying to say at all. It's not a failure, although there are many attempts, many flat souffles that fall in the oven before you actually get experience of what it is to successfully retransform all of this solidified matter back into light. Part of that is a journey of your mind and your consciousness, the understanding and the healing of the rift that is implanted by society that essentially says there's a separation between the level of your body that is moving at this rate, pure light, pure energy, pure spirit, versus duality-wise, the level of your body that is moving at this rate through time that is known as material matter. Which brings us to Sir Isaac Newton, a great person who lived in the 1600s in Europe and who greatly influenced the thought structure of humanity even up into our present day. He was an explorer of the world around him using his five senses and an objective materialist, meaning that he was objective. He looked at the world. He didn't say, my eyes are affecting the world. He said, the world is what it is. The wall is what it is. I'm going to use my eyes to look at the world. I'm going to use my hands to feel the world. I'm going to use balances and measures and things like that to see how many inches long or centimeters. How much does it weigh? How many pounds does it weigh? What qualities does it have? He went around measuring the world around him. And that was somewhat of a step up because from his point of view, the world was full of what he would call superstition, where people did have a very spiritual viewpoint. It was still a world that was coming out of the Spanish Inquisition or the Christian Inquisition that was very much about like, I accuse thee of being a witch. You know what I'm talking about here. Like I'm being a little silly and a little Monty Python, but that was also a very devastating time in human consciousness where claims were not supported. To a very, very vicious and destructive end result. Anybody could be accused of anything. Claims were not supported. Spiritual was messed with the physical, and everything was a giant soup that was never defined, but not in a sense of positivity and freedom. And what Newton did was say, let's stop just randomly accusing people of witchcraft or just ascribing motives and storylines and narratives to things that are largely projective, and let's actually be objective, to look at the world and all agree, like I can measure this thing weighs this much and I can see that this thing actually happened, and looking at evidence of consensual reality, which is basically the reality structure that we can all agree on. So I'm trying to frame this as Newtonian physics was a step up from destructive and harmful superstition and projection, because a lot of that projection was just ego crapola. Like, I don't like thee, therefore I shall accuse thee. There is no evidence between it, but I will now burn you at the stake. I'm being facetious, but it was horrible. Step up, objective materialism was a step up in saying, let's actually assess the truthfulness and the evidence of the world around us. And actually, Newton is where we get, he did a ton of work with light experiments, prismatic structures, refraction and reflection, and being able to understand the mechanics of light waves. That was before anyone even knew that light was a wave or formally recognized that. I'm trying to say Newton was or is a parent of consciousness in that he gave a worldview to the world that was in the 1600s and that was coming out of a dark ages time that has lasted up until now. And it is literally what is known and defined as the world of physics, physical science, looking at the world of physical stuff and matter and measuring it and describing the things that happen according to that, and all of the empowerment structures that have been able to be experienced due to that level of measurement and observation, everything from chemistry to mechanical engineering to so much of what is, again, has allowed humanity a type of power structure, powerfulness in the world that we see around us. It's very practical stuff. It's very applicable stuff. And Newton is really responsible in large part for reinforcing the concept of duality, which I've already said is already biologically, as a foundation, I want to say inculcated. I don't know if that's exactly the right term. It is baked in to the way that you look at the world, just based in the sense of having I1 versus I2. Most people have binocular vision, and contrast. Here's the light part of my face versus here's the shadow that is behind my hair. You see in contrast, you develop a depth perception due to contrast. And then there's also the sense of looking at the world as an object versus like here's an object versus the negative space around it. All of that stuff is biological. Then Newton did a lot with creating more cultural and scientific and thought structure expectations of duality. What Newton did was describe the behavior of macroscopic objects, bowling balls and feathers and planets that you can see going across the night sky, or stars that you can see going across the night sky. A lot of it also has to do with calculation and predictability. Big things that we can all agree upon, that we can all see, sense, and touch and feel moving in ways that are predictable. We're like, yep, on this night, the moon is going to be over here, and on this night, it's going to be full, and on this night, I'm going to see this, and this time I'm going to see this. Now let's contrast that with Einstein, who was in the early 1900s. So this is already over 100 years ago. And the Einsteinian viewpoint was, again, a leveling up for the human culture and the human perception to be able to understand or comprehend that we're not just perceiving objectively a whole bunch of physical matter, stuff that exists independently of self, that what is actually happening is an interrelationship between observer and observed. And this is what I use as the example of the fifth dimensional bakery. The fifth dimensional bakery is like you're swimming through a giant sea of cake batter. There's just lots of potentiality. It's a sea of waveforms. And what happens is you have ovens in front of your eyes that heat the cake batter, cook it wherever you look. So when you look at that wall, you're affecting the non-physical potentiality world of the fifth dimension and higher. And what you're doing is solidifying or coalescing those potentialities into the matter that you can then experience as an embodied person. This is also what I mean when I say chicken and egg question, because you are non-material, you have created materiality, then out of your materiality experience, you create more materiality. You look at a bunch of waveform potentials of the wall behind you, and you collapse those waveforms with the ovens in front of your eyes with your observership into a wall. And then you even, like, you guys, you could come and visit me And you could touch the wall and you could be like, that's a real wall. And it is a real wall because you have made it a real wall. So I'm making it a real wall. Billy, Martine, Patricia, Lucy, Angela, Charles. I'm on like the Magic Garden here, no romper room, and Art. Everybody who's tuned in, and even people who are tuning in later, and people who are non-local, are all contributing to consensual reality. In this sense, it means that we have a consensus, not consent in the sense of like, I allow you to do something to me, but in the sense of consensus. Drinking my magical water here. We all agree that it exists, and it is in many ways a facility, something that is facile. Look, we got to get through life, guys. We're all just going to have to agree that that's a wall behind me, okay? Like, just for the sake of getting through the day, we as humans do a lot in terms of consensus with reality architecture. We're like, yep, that thing exists. It is just the way it is. We all kind of agree in a group that that's the way that reality is structured. Einstein really did a lot in terms of another person here. This self-responsibility, the story of how our reality comes into being. So this is actually cosmology. Cosmology is the story that is told in a particular culture as to how reality was created. How did all this stuff get here? Where did we come from as humans? And what is the meaning of all this stuff? So for some cultures, cosmology might be something like, humans were born out of an egg and you live on the back of a giant turtle and you're held up by the pillars of 4 elephants. And humans would be like, like how silly it is to believe that, how benighted or simplistic or whatever. It's a cosmology, it's a story, it's a narrative structure of where you came from, what upholds reality, and it also informs your daily existence. If you're like, don't, step too heavily, like you don't want to make the turtle, go out of balance because you don't want to get thrown off of its turtle shell or something like that. Don't slide off the edge of the turtle shell. Einstein and Newton both heavily shaped the modern cosmology or story narrative structure of how humans view reality, view materiality, material existence, and the story of what makes the world and what upholds the world, the continuation of the world, the creation of the world, the continuation of the world, and then even perhaps the eventual destruction of the world, as Einstein talks about black holes and the eventual heat death, the calculated heat death of our cosmos, which is at this moment, seething and hot and doing stuff and dynamic and expanding outward. But according to this model, at a certain point in about like 13 billion years, it will expand a certain amount so that what will be achieved is quote unquote the heat death of the cosmos, where there's no more of this matter kind of crashing into each other and the friction and the self-generative processes that happen from there, and basically go into a fade out entropy state. Whoa, fade out, everything stops. And that is what would be considered the death of the universe, not cosmos, but one timeline, one universe from Big Bang to heat death of the cosmos, which is what this scientific model believes in. And they also sometimes believe in the big crunch, which is like the Big Bang expanding outward, and then at a certain point, the big crunch inward. It's not my model, but just for the understanding that just like the tortoise and the elephants is also not my model. It is a cosmology, a story of you that you believe in, that informs your existence, that is in many ways agreed to as a facility or commonality, so that you can be like, okay, we live in this type of a world, that's where the Big Bang created everything, and that's a wall behind me, and we're just getting on with life, and we're going to like drive to our jobs and drink coffee and do stuff. All right. And that's just the story in the modern world. Part of this cosmology, that is something that I'm teaching you to move beyond, because I want you guys to raise up all of your matter of your body and elevate it into divinity and return to a divinely connected state of being a pure light being and fly in a ship of consciousness that is not a clank metal spaceship. I am teaching you to go beyond this sense of the limitation of the speed of light. So that's, and so many other things too, and the non-inevitability of death and redefining death as a portal, not as an end. All of these things I teach to you as empowerment structures and a new cosmology, a new sense of where you came from, how you are coming into being, what is the continuation, what is the upholdment, and what is the destruction or end, and is it an actual destruction or end? Einstein taught people about the speed of light. The speed of light in a vacuum is roughly 186,000 miles per second. We don't have to get too much into the exactitudes of it because it is not relevant to our discussion, but it's just the sense that in the vacuum of space, in the linear journey from point A to point B, light has a perceived limit, and that Einstein taught people that that's the upper limit of how fast light can move. But I've just gone through extensive and analogous teaching to be able to tell you that if you want to get a signal from the brain to the big toe of the galaxy, you can't just have light move that slow. The neurological signal will become irrelevant by the time it reaches the big toe. So what has to happen is a basically communication through a higher dimensional space or a higher dimensional self state, or a way of bending and folding the fabric of time, space, and consciousness so that impulses and signals can travel from the central source of intelligence, the singularity, to the periphery or to any place else. Once you really embody this truth of the singularity being inside of you, and it is the same doorway and the same singularity, and there is no space between you and any other object or thing or place that contains the singularity, then literally you become connected to the totality. Literally, you become part of unity consciousness. Literally, you achieve a new level of instantaneity. I don't know if that is a word, but instantaneous connection. And, or maybe I should say continuity, because the instantaneousness of your connection to everythingness also means that there is no time. And everything that is happening all at once. And now you're starting to understand why I find, not in a critical negativity sense, but this language structure here is very inadequate for me to talk about the things that I want to talk about, which are nonlinear, and also what it's like in the place where I come from, because I come from that level of interconnectivity where the singularity that is inside of me is also the singularity that is inside of the everything else, and the same doorway is connected to all light. All light presence is connected to everything everywhere. Everythingness of everywhere is talking to everything all at once, and there is a simultaneity, or I don't know if it's the word, if the word is quantum, but there's a higher dimensional simultaneity that is experienced that renders this linear language completely distortive and inadequate. Again, I'm not just trying to be mean and be like, your language is not enough. I'm not, but I'm just trying to share with you the moderate frustrations that I feel when I try to talk about these things that are going on, and that in those levels of experience and perception, we are largely beyond linear language. We use this type of a language to talk to each other, which is the language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. And tone is, ooh, I have some music going. That's why that sounded so weird. What did I have? I have my music set up from playing music earlier today. I'm like, I don't even know what sounds are going to happen when I press my piano these days. Einstein taught everyone about the speed of light, but I'm giving you the level up. Einstein's equations were also really about a balance between matter and energy. Let's say my face is the equals sign of Einstein's famous equation. E on one side, energy. MC squared, matter times the speed of light squared. These are in dualistic opposition. Wait a minute, guys. Newton gave us a lot of dualistic opposition, and our bodies gave us a lot of dualistic opposition, and then Einstein gave us a lot of dualistic opposition. I don't like all this dualistic opposition. I'm being very silly. Hey, good to see you, Trisha. Thank you. Yes, I'm facetious in a lot of my exaggeratedness for lighthearted and emphasis, because you'll remember the teachings more. But yes, a dualistic relationship, energy versus matter, matter versus energy. This has given some amount of empowerment to humanity in the sense of chemical storage of energy. Like if I take this much energy and I condense it down into this much dynamite or nitroglycerin, then I know if I add heat to this nitroglycerin, kapow, it will release this much energy. I can do a whole calculation structure. This many grams of TNT equals a boom of this size release of energy over here. Like, wow, like that allows a lot of things to happen. Or what, let's say if I'm making a gas turbine. I'm going to burn this much natural gas over here. I'm going to burn this much coal over here. And that's stored up energy in the form of matter. And then I'm going to release it and transform it into this side of the equation over here as this many kilowatts per hour. And that, everyone, is exciting because then it makes electrons flow in my light bulb and I can have a fill light so you can actually see my face. And, you know, we don't just have to go completely on using the sunlight and only be active during the time the sun is around. Hold on, make my light on my face more. Yeah, electric lights can be fun and wonderful and freeing and empowering. Like, I don't mean to be down on the use of electric lights, but I'm also trying to say that this gives a sense of limitation to the perception and experience of the human in this world of constantly balancing matter versus energy, including in your own body. The matter of my physical body versus the energy of my energy body. And even the sense that people like think of it, eventually my energy body will be free. Just gonna mute you, but not because I don't love you, but just for the sake of the pristineness of the audio recording. One day, here we go, one day, you know, this expectation, one day, I won't have my physical body anymore, I'll just have my energy body. Like, I will get rid of the matter. Wait, matter's on this side of the equation. E is on this side and matter is on this side. I'm going to get rid of the matter and I'm just going to have E. And what I teach with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is, just like a solenoid, what happens if we join together these seemingly opposite poles of duality? North pole versus south pole, hot versus cold, positive versus negative, matter versus energy. What happens if we put them on the same side of the equation? In a solenoid, what happens if you have a dipole magnet, north versus south, and you bend that magnet around? What ends up happening is you create a solenoid or a toroidal shape. And actually all of these magnetic lines end up kind of coming inside out. I'm turning myself inside out. So now you have just a completely different structure from solving the duality. You got it in a magnet. You've got your north pole versus your south pole, but actually north and south attract one another because what they're trying to do is resolve their dualities. And if you bend them around and resolve their dualities, you end up with the holistic totality structure. Energy versus matter is the same idea of a bifurcated dualistic system that is actually trying to resolve itself by joining these two forces together. What happens if I swoop around the fabric of time, space, and consciousness so that these two things touch together? Matter and energy touch together. They're no longer on opposite sides of a giant balance beam or set of scales. Now they are both on the same side of the scale. What happens if we do that with this equation? Instead of energy equals matter, what happens if we do energy plus matter and then equals question mark? The answer is equals infinity. You end up putting all of this stuff together into unity consciousness, into togetherness, into one holistic whole. And then the equal sign means infinity. And that is literally what Flying Rainbow Lasagna does. It changes the dualistic structure or dualistic nature of your inside versus your outside, your matter versus your energy, your spirit body versus your material body. They become seamlessly intertwined and seamlessly interactive. Let me go back to my notes. Einstein's equations were really about the balance between matter and energy, balance in constant dualistic opposition, about how things behave as they begin to speed up. That's another big part of the teaching. The idea of, now we're getting into science's definition of the singularity as getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, speeding up more and more and more. a lot of Einstein's thought experiments had to do with what happens like if one twin stays on the planet's surface and another twin gets in a magical space rocket ship and flies off and is flying very, very, very fast, zooming around, zooming around, zooming around, and gets very close to the speed of light, and then comes back to Earth. And the guy that's been, or gal, that's been in the magical rocket ship flying around has aged but a few days, but comes back to find their twin is now old, 100 years old with all white hair and has aged a lot. And this is the idea of relativity, that your experience of moving through time is relative contextually to how fast you are moving relative to the speed of light. But again, Einstein was telling you that there's a limitation in terms of how much you can accelerate. And what he tried to say is that you can accelerate close to the speed of light, but not actually get there. And that's like saying you can get close to infinity or close to that singularity or close to that infinitely stretchy spot. Where is my sculpture? Hold on. Should be prepared for class, but I do need to kind of stand up and stretch my legs. Hold on. The singularity, and here I'll hold it up against the wall so you can kind of see that spot right there in the center of that sculpture. And you see this physical form, three-dimensional sculpture, but when I hold it just the right way, mimics or shows the way that I do cutaways of these other two-dimensional artistic representations behind me. But every single one of these has as its, what is my subject matter? What do I paint? Like not florals, not landscapes. I paint singularities. There's this, look, there's singularity there on my dress. There's singularity there. There's singularity there. Like there's singularity all over that painting. There's singularity all over that painting. These are all singularity. Let me get my magical scarf as I do. And the flowers are still standing. My magical scarf that represents the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. The singularity. There is only one singularity, but this fabric of time, space, and consciousness represents the unfoldedness, effulgence. I don't know if that is the word, but when something kind of gushes outward, time, space, and consciousness have gushed outward. And that's the world that you see around you. These are all of these pointy stretchinesses of the fabric of time and space, and they are all gathered together in this formation, and they all, you can imagine a million different stretchinesses, and they all converge together into the tiniest little point coming together. Imagine like one little tiny molecule of silk where all of those stretchy points come, and that this entire scarf has been stretched a million times. That's the singularity. That's what that little spot is on my dress. That's what that spot is at the center of that anatomical drawing that shows a personness there. That is what's at the center of this sculpture. So Einstein was saying that the singularity or the speed of light or this infinity point is something that you can approach, but you can never actually reach or experience. And there were many calculations that were done about this, but that's part of a limiting reality structure. And I'm here to tell you, yes, not only can you approach the speed of light or the singularity or that convergence point, but that it is inevitable, that that is your journey, that you have been emanating from that level of infinity, vastness, unity consciousness, and beingness out into the time field where you are circulating around, and that it is quite inevitable. I'm circulating like a spiral, but you just can't see it with my finger. But you're circulating around, getting back up to that convergence point through exploring the various different timelines, possibilities, and probabilities that have been emitted by the sun stars as part of the music of time, space, and consciousness. So not only is it possible, it is inevitable. You will make it. You are an inevitability particle, and that is the journey that you are on. And that's what I talked about last week in terms of being a part of the biofeedback loop and sensory organs of the sun sending out light and photons as feelers. You're made of solidified light. You're part of the sun and the stars. You're feeling all the stuff that's going on here. And then you're sending it back to the sun and the stars and saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Just like if I touch things with my fingers are like, I'm feeling that. Now I'm feeling that. Now I'm feeling that. I'm sending things all the way from my fingertips, all the way up my arm, all the way to my brain, which is the center of my perception in my body. And then my body is building a picture of reality based upon this. This was teachings from last week. The sun and the stars as sending out light as photon feelers to experience the sensorium around us, build a picture of reality, then send it back. And you're sending back not just the 5 senses that Newton observed and described, but also possibilities and probabilities through time. All of the many possibilities on the periphery, all of your game over, try again lives, where you're like, wah, wah, hit the membrane of death, had to try again. You send that information back to the sun, and the sun is like, so that's what happened there. Okay, definitely don't want to do that again. Let's change the entire reality structure. This is big. The sun as one doorway to the singularity. I already got that, the heliosphere. Out of that doorway comes one piece of light, consciousness, which would have traveled infinitely, but got stuck in the vortex of the world of materiality by interaction with our planet, and is now part of third dimensionality, part of the journey of consciousness on an earthly level. It is not a trap. And I speak to people who are here feeling very trapped and victimized. That's why I have to say that. But the journey of light, to be like, I'm light and I'm free and I'm just going to go through the vast interstellar space and going on and on and on, as being a better journey than being like, I'm light and I've come here to earth and now I got trapped by a leaf and now I'm stuck in materiality. Because a lot of people here are at odds with the limitations and feelings of materiality. I understand and I get it, and I'm being facetious and exaggerated in my way of teaching here. But it is not meant to be a prison or a stuck place. It is a vortex, though. You come from the sun star, you're emitted as pure light. The light comes into this vortex of reality and then circulates here, but then is supposed to circulate right back on up and out. Not supposed to get stuck here. That's very, very, very big. So I understand people who feel like they're stuck in the washing machine, stuck in the karmic washing machine, on the spin cycle, not enjoying it, having a particular viewpoint. But in a pristine system, the way that things are supposed to work is light emitted from singularity through the portal of the sun. Light goes on its journey. Light hits and encounters matter, mother, mama. It gestates, it does stuff, it experiences stuff. And then all of that is sent back and broadcast back to the sun, which is connected to the galactic center, which is connected to another center, which is connected to another center of neurology and consciousness being that is so large. And you pull back and you're like, can't even comprehend it while wearing this type of brain. But it's out there and it's big, a big giant time animal. And you broadcast all of this stuff back to that time animal. That light is broadcast from the sun into physical forms that are refractors of consciousness. And the light has been slowed down and created into physical corporeal forms, which are themselves these prismatic like refractors of consciousness. So the matter itself becomes a refractor of light, but the idea is not merely dispersing light or trapping light or harming light or victimizing it or stopping it on its journey or enslaving it or imprisoning it. Any of those things, again, I have to say this because you're in the washing machine on spin cycle for this many times and you're like, abort, like, let us out, we hate it. I'm joking. Again, I'm being facetious about all of these things, but I relate to you, and that is literally why I am here. It is supposed to be a return journey as well, which is what we are experiencing right now. Big emphasis here. You are that refractor of consciousness, the impulse that comes from quote unquote above or from higher dimensional, less dense realms. This is a higher state of intelligence that comes into the energy system. Big, 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 like that beam of white light that I showed coming down into a person's crown, or coming into the cellular structure through the doorway to infinity that you have at the center of all of your trillions of cells, is a signal of higher intelligence, of data and information from higher intelligence. And what happens then mirrors what happens in a prism. The change in the speed when the light begins to move through the different media is what splits the light into constituent elements. So that white light of unity consciousness, of pure intelligence, of raw data, information from the cosmos coming into you gets changed in its speed in these various different layers. Chunk, 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 red, orange, yellow, green, blue, physical, emotional, intellectual, heart, communication, insight, and connection to the divine. Chunk, 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 or stretchinesses, that these different stretchinesses are achieved through that experience of moving through the levels of densification of your own matter, of your own body. According to the spectrum of physical light, violet waves are shorter wavelength and higher frequency than the red waves. That's just basic science talk. Frequency versus wavelength. So the red is the big, fat, giant wave, and the violet is the smaller, tinier violet wave. And that one of these crashes on the beach, whatever, let's say once a minute, but one of these crashes on the beach 7 times a minute. That's frequency, 7. I go 7 times faster than this over here. And that is truthful also in the levels of your being. Let's also return to last week's teaching. Why don't we just plug directly into the sun? Aurora, I don't like that this energy has to be slowed down and diminished in any way. Give me what you got, like plug me directly in. And I would say, no, I don't think that would be wise, because if you did, you would instantaneously incinerate your physical body. The physical body would literally change state. That is what incineration is. It is the adding of heat energy from changing something from one state of matter, which would be considered solid matter, directly into a hot gas or a plasma. That would be what happened if we put your physical body directly into the sun. The sun is very fast and very hot and is moving at an incredibly high rate of being. And if we took that energy and we plugged your physical cellular structure directly into that energy, instantaneously, you would be vaporized, or you would change state. You would transform from being solid to a gas and then to a plasma. You would die. It would not be healthy for your physical somatic state. That is why this system, like an electrical transformer system, exists. So if you took your computer and you plugged it directly into the power station, and you got all of that incredibly high, fast power from the electrical generation station, it would blow out all of your microchips of your computer. You would fry your motherboard, or whatever you would call it, and nothing would work anymore. So you have to accept that when you are in a physicality state, you have to get energy that is moving at the right rate for your state, so that you do not overwhelm the container. If you want to add energy to the container, you got to add it in sensible increments, sensible bites. The airplane goes in and the baby eats the food, and then sensible bites go in. Your physicality structure has to be raised up by adding light incrementally, not all at once. Don't plug directly into the sun all at once. Incrementally, sun gazing. Every day, do some sun gazing and add light to your physical cellular structure. Every day, accrete more light. Every day, get more higher intelligence. Every day, get more consciousness. Every day, get more connected to the sun and the stars and the great brain in the sky. Then you will not be instantly evaporated or incinerated when you are exposed to those profoundly impactful waves of stellar consciousness. When one talks about seeing the aura of people or seeing the non-physical energy centers, it happens not with the physical eye, but with the non-physical inner eye. So again, we have an inner eye that is your pineal gland's projection, that is your eye of time, that is associated with Christ consciousness, and that this is what you use in order to see the field of light, or the aura, or the force field that exists and interpenetrates with the physicality structure. So your physical eyes see the light of my physical body. Your senses can feel the heat, the infrared of my physical body. If you touched me with your hand, you would feel that I am warm. But in order to see the rainbow colors of my aura, or my chakras, or my non-physical body, you must focus your tendril of attention from your inner eye upon me. And please only do so consensually. Thank you. Non-physical light is organized and behaves in a similar way to physical light. Get it? organized light waves. So there are analogies to the non-physical light, which is made of pure consciousness, and physical light that we see coming from my light bulb over here, but they are not exactly interchangeable, but they behave in a similar way. Physical light being an aspect or subset of the larger light body context. Physical light, all of it, everything that we see in the physicality with our eyeballs, gushy eyeballs that are right here, is here in the red zone. But we also perceive all of these other layers of our time body by using our aperture of attention, by using our tendril of attention. You reach out and you touch on feelings, thoughts, love, higher dimensional guidance, connection to the divine. You reach out and touch that with your tendril. Color proportions. We are talking about higher consciousness that comes into you as a corporeal being and is split into its various subtle layers. Your anthropomorphic body sitting in the center, like in this, I have a picture. I will show you the picture. Sitting in the center of the picture is this picture. If you go to the Teachable, you'll see this picture over here actually in its sketch form. The body that's outlined in white in this picture, it has a very large energy field rotating around it. So the large energy field is kind of in a pinkish magenta color, and you can see it's big. It goes all the way around the seated figure. The impact that the energy of non-physicality has on the physical realm. The energy field extends at least as far as your arms, even sometimes even further. Red, the largest chakra, encompasses the physical being. So you're sitting within the red energy field. It's like a cloud of energy that you sit within. It's your physicality. You as consciousness are sitting within a cloud of energy known as your physicality. It's your body. It's your body. You're sitting within a giant red energy field that is called your body, and the you is the you at the center of this picture. The other chakras being nested within that larger physical chakra. So then within that physicality presence, you have all of these other non-physicality presences. That's what Newton didn't look at or measure, because he couldn't look at it or measure it with his five senses. He couldn't measure it, so he couldn't talk about it. It's not physical. It doesn't belong to the realm of physics. The significance of comprehension, your intangible energy fields are all, quote unquote, within your physicality. Got it? All of your physical somatic cellular structure contains all of these other rainbow colors and layers of your being. Now, I hope that that starts to begin to emphasize how important your physical structure is. It's like, yes, like you have this amazing physical envelope that contains all of these other layers of your being. Light and the journey of consciousness. I tell you in my class all the time, light word, the word light in my teaching is interchangeable with the word consciousness or awareness in my teaching. When I say light, I'm also saying consciousness. Light and consciousness are not limited to the speed of light. Think the speed of consciousness. How fast can a neurological signal travel from the galactic center to the toe, the big toe that we live on? Einstein gave us an upgraded understanding of the world from Newton's limited understanding, but it did not tell the whole big picture story. Once we begin to understand the singularity, we begin to understand that consciousness is non-local. Emphasized in my notes. It's in bold and underlined. Consciousness is non-local, 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 non-local. Consciousness is non-local. That means that it is all connected. It is all connected, not in a point A to point B sense, but in totality sense. And this is a big part of my teaching of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and my embodiment of it. And it is a big part of leveling up. You know, I want you guys to know, first of all, I appreciate so much the hard work that you do in terms of your comprehension. I know that these are not easy concepts to, you know, wrap your brain around, and that you have to do a lot of yoga of perception. There are amazing light beings that are out there, up there, in there, all around, and they absolutely want to interact with you. The only challenge is you have to really stretch your comprehension to be able to know and understand and perceive the levels of reality and the reality structure in an effective way, so that you can actually have a conversation with them, meet them, recognize them, and know what is going on. Consciousness is non-local. This is about becoming a part of that knowingness that consciousness is non-local. It takes all of these teachings and all of these hours of lectures for me to share with you, for you to get to the point, no condescension intended, that you're like, consciousness is non-local, that I've got a singularity in me, and it's the same singularity in the sun, it's the same singularity in every point of light, and it's the same singularity and infinity point everywhere and in every other being, person, and then Kachanka, unity consciousness. And now you're part of that great band, or part of that great symphony of life, or part of that level of consciousness being. Angela says these concepts are freeing. Yes, exactly. That is exactly right. It's meant to help you to level up and to become a galactic citizen, and to be able to connect with all the super cool people that are out there. People, beings, creatures, organisms, whatever we would call them. They're not all anthropomorphic. When I say the word people, sometimes they are people, but they just might look like a beam of light. But that's like, I'm an abstraction. I'm a beam of light. I'm a song in the world. And then I'm also here in this body right now. There's a lot of super cool organisms or creatures or levels of consciousness that really, really, really want to interact with you and are hugely loving and supportive, but they are just incomprehensible to you in some ways, imperceptible and incomprehensible. And so it's just about breaking through those walls of expectation and comprehension into what organism is, what creature is, what created organism is, how do you experience that in order to have some of these beautiful expanded and uplifting interactions, which are, again, inevitable as you are re-achieving the speed of light. The galactic center emanates a thought wave and does not travel nearly at the speed of light from my brain to my big toe. If that were true, by the time the galactic being thought its very first thought, and that thought emanated out, and we finally experienced it here on Earth in the dirt road, outer reaches of rural Earth, it would be the end of the lifespan of the galaxy. It would be like, wow, like that's however many billion years, all of this stuff has died, all of this stuff is no longer relevant, we're done. We're done, and we're just getting like the first opening notes of the symphony. Like, wait, I'm just picking up my instrument to play. No, the song's over. It's all done, because that is how long it would take for those signals to get to us. So in order for us to be active, participant musicians of consciousness, contributing to the music and hearing the music and dancing in time with the music, it is absolutely necessary for us to experience all time as now, consciousness as now, light that moves fast, consciousness, light that moves faster than the limits of the speed of light. Part of the envelope, again, this teaching that I did in 2013, so it was just after 2012. The envelope, the quarantine of consciousness, that limitation that has kept earthly perceivers from interacting with the consciousness that is at large in the galactic center. Part of it's been some of these inculcated, programmed in foundation beliefs about the limitations of the speed of life. Light, speed of light, but notice how my mouth said speed of life. I think that's an apt misspeaking there, the speed of life. If one believes that the only way to receive information is to receive physical light traveling at the speed of light, then you will not be able to have access to some of this information. So you have to know that there is another way to speak in the higher dimensional realm than just the speed of light. Lucy says, for some reason, I'm having trouble staying focused and disconnect with the work I want to do. Is this me, or are others finding lots of interference? Oh, I cannot speak to that, but I do know that Lucy always tries to balance doing many things, and we respect you for being here even in the middle of your workday. I've been teaching all about how to fold time, space, and consciousness for a long time. The flying rainbow lasagna, more of a bending and folding of time, space. And how do you do it? Using your willpower and your instrument, which is your physicality presence, again, a beautiful object that I just keep on emphasizing, not a disposable burden, but a beautiful object that is an instrument that you use to fold time, space, and consciousness, using your willpower and also using the tool that is known as your DNA. And the sense of the little ant walking on a flat time plane. Little ant walking along, I'm walking along, I don't have wings, I have to go all the way across this whole entire time plane to get from point A to point B. But what if I'm able to fold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness? Then all of a sudden, one time, this moment in time here and this moment in time here are not far apart at all. They are very, very close together. Charlie and Lucy both say that these concepts are difficult to understand and that sometimes their mind and their brain gets overwhelmed. They have trouble focusing, and that they maybe even want to fall asleep. It is time to stand up. Do the 9th inning stretch, everyone. Please engage with your physical presence. Please stretch your spine as much as is comfortable for you to move and stretch your spine. Please stretch out your hips and your pelvis. Please do a deep stretch. Bend down. You can, if it's comfortable for you, bend at the waist like this and stretch out your hamstrings all the way down to the floor. Engaging your feet on the planet of the surface. Imagine that you've got your feet like literally touching Earth's core. Literally reach up and touch the sun. Be in a posture of triumph. Stretch out your wings as much as you possibly can comfortably. Do only postures that are comfortable to you. But please, I do a ton of using my body as an integrative tool when I'm learning new things. So I usually do not sit for many hours at a time. Let's do a little hamstring stretch. Come on, guys, I should have led you through this a long time ago. Do a little stretch for this over here. Oops, do a little stretch for this over here. Bend it down again, bending down again. Please stretch as much, even if you are at your desk. You know, it's another good stretch you can do. Just stretch out again, if it is comfortable. Stretch out your hands a little bit like this. Stretch out your hands a little bit like this. Stretch your fingers, stretch each individual finger. I stretch my neck sometimes. I know you guys can see it. I don't mean to make weird faces when I do it. Take a deep breath from your nose all the way deep into your pineal gland. Oh, I know you heard that. I hope you heard that pop. Fantastic. Good. And please do not be too socially inhibited to do stretches like that throughout my class or throughout your day, but don't get fired from your job if you have to do that. Yeah. I know that it can be a challenge to focus on things and that it's not about boredom at all. And that also it sometimes can be about the body cellular structure needing to integrate and process things. You guys, you might also sometimes see me working with this. When I work with this, I'm always like doing all sorts of different massages and stimulations throughout my body, not trying to be distracted to anyone, but it's because I move a lot of energy through my body while I'm doing these intellectual processes. My mouth and my brain are moving a lot, but also my integument, my body, my blood is also moving. It's all part of the giant computer processor, quote unquote, that I am. And you guys are too. So the body is an amazing natural biological supercomputer. And it's absolutely essential to use it, respect it, love it. That's why you also see me also. I'm like drinking my electrolyte water. I need calcium. You don't want these things to keep going. Angela wants to know, what is this? This is an amethyst wand, and it's kind of rounded on one end and pointy on the other end. And it was gifted to me, and I like this one a lot. They make them out of all sorts of different stones. And it's like a little massage, a little massage wand. And I use this for all sorts of different things to get into deep muscle and deep tissue, fascia release. But then also in terms of the vocal toning work, sometimes like singing into an energy field, just placing this crystal in different places through not touching the body can also be very powerful. So crystals are wonderful tools and allies for us. And that's one way that I use this crystal. Let's talk about the singularity. We're getting on to part 2 of this lesson, many separate doorways to infinity. I already drew this out for you in the whiteboard. We'll go back to it fast as a little recap. Many different doorways to reality. That's this over here, what I was drawing over here. That kind of weird figure 8 shape is infinity. And these are all doorways that all open up to the same place. There is really no distance at all between this doorway here and this doorway here, even though that line that I drew, that blue line, might be an uncountable number of miles apart. So many miles, I can't even put it into words. Incredibly far apart. Inside of you, each person has a doorway to infinity. So the center of a star has a doorway to infinity. The center of you and your being has a doorway to infinity. That is this picture here. Okay, there's an anthropomorphic human with a center to infinity right in the center of that person's chest. But it goes even further because you have trillions of cells clustered together, and each cell has at its center a nucleus, and each of the nuclei have DNA, and each of your DNA is itself a center and has a singularity or a doorway to infinity. And also when your DNA is supercoiled or twisted up like a twisted piece of yarn, it also creates these donut-shaped or toroidal structures. Every donut has at its center, a doorway to infinity, the singularity. And you have in your DNA many, many, many stacked up donuts of infinity. So you don't even have just one doorway of singularity to the singularity within one cell. You then end up having multiple hundreds, thousands, or millions, depending upon how supercoiled your DNA is. And then at the center of every atom, like you have, here's your nucleus of the atom, and then here's the electron shells. Every single one of the nuclei of your atoms has a center, at its center, a connection to infinity, a doorway to infinity, or one aspect of the singularity. Big. Planet Earth has a magnetosphere, which is shaped exactly like this and is perceived and measurable according to science. And it has a singularity at its center. The sun is the heliosphere and has a singularity at its center. Like I already did the example of my magical scarf, piece of fabric that has these multiple singularities as a part of it. All of these vortexes being pulled in and converging into one infinity place, and each chakra is a doorway to infinity. And I, of course, will say, I speak in simplified terms of 7 major chakras, but there are many, many, many multiple nodes of stretchiness of the stretchy fabric of the cosmos within you, beyond just the 7 major chakras that I speak about and teach about. So you have very, very, very many uncountable within one organism doorways to infinity. There is a doorway to infinity, and the doorway goes in 2 directions. Energy comes in, energy goes out. Let's go further. Energy coming into this torus shape, and energy flows out of this torus shape. Da, da, da. Energy does not get stuck. The endless cycle of energy flow in the cosmos. This is part of the metabolism of what keeps the larger time animal alive. Energy flows in, energy flows out. It is not an imprisonment. It is a freedom. It is beautiful. Energy has come into your energy system. And that's that white light of pure consciousness. It has been broken down into its constituent elements, all of the Roy G. Biv colors of consciousness layers, but that is not the end of the journey. The next part of the journey is the reintegration of the separated layers. You get it? White light comes down into the prismatic structure and is split up into Roy G. Biv. Then in the opposite complementary level of the journey, all of the Roy G. Biv colors get reintegrated back into white light, joined up again. Each one of us has been emanated or broadcasted here as a unique individual. I'm me, you're you, everybody's different, everybody's a unique individual. We're all unity consciousness split up into these various different colors. That's only part of the journey. The complementary part of the journey is the reintegration of all of these unique individual presences into white light or unity consciousness. Yeah. All of these impulses get woven back together and created back into white light and sent back up to higher consciousness. What happens with energy emanation? This is exactly what happens with energy emanations from the sun. We are the children of the sun. That's why I used that image, but I just won't get the whole painting out. That is called Children of True Humanity. You are children of the sun. The sun is a doorway, not merely a nuclear furnace. And for the light to be emanated outward, it becomes solidified as physical matter, as earthly 3-dimensional matter. And then what happens? Is it stuck here? No, of course not. We're only halfway through the journey. The light that has become matter gets refined, and through your energy system, your chakras, the energy then gets raised back up to the higher vibrational levels and transmitted back to the sun. It is transmitted back to the sun as thought energy, the thoughts and the experiences of your physical sensorium. It is also transmitted back to the sun in the sense of energy raising up your spinal column and exiting out through the top of your head in the sense of an orgasm, or you would call it a cosmic orgasm also, spontaneous rising of what in some spiritual traditions is defined or called the Kundalini. Every time you eat and you are consciously broadcasting the sensations of ingesting your food, you are feeding the light body. You're broadcasting, I already said this in previous lessons, your peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever you're eating, you're broadcasting that back to the sun that gave you all of the energy to make bread and peanut butter and jam and even have the neurological sensations and impulses flowing through your body to be able to have the experience. You are using borrowed sunlight. This is from last week's class. And you are sending it all back to the sun. And that is one of the greatest gratitude prayers or examples that you can do. It's a way of saying thank you. Like, I am eating that, I'm feeling it, and I'm completely sending that sensation back to the one that has given that out to me. The sun is like a bat with echolocation. How do bats sense the world around them? They actually do not sense with their eyes as we sense with our eyes. They sense with their ears by sending out sound waves, echolocation. They send out a wave, it hits an object, then it bounces back off of that object and comes back to them. And they hear it, and they hear the slight differences between the way they sent it out and the way that they received it in. And in so doing, they build a three-dimensional picture of the world around them. Like, hey, there's a thing there, and then over there, there's nothing. Like, there's a thing there. Don't fly in that direction. You'll run into a tree, but there's nothing over there. Or there's a mosquito there. Fly there and eat that mosquito. That's what it matters to that echolocation, being able to determine a sense of where objects are in reality, as opposed to what color those objects are. The sun and the stars do something very similar. They send out energy and they wait for that energy to hit matter. If it hits matter and bounces back, it's like, there's a thing there. There's a planet there. There's people having experiences there. And it is a way of building a three-dimensional picture of reality, but of course, not just three-dimensional, shaped in a box with X, Y, and Z axes, but also moving through time, because at every moment our position shifts. At every moment what we're doing shifts. So the sun needs to have a real-time broadcast, who we are, where we are, what we're doing, and then how we change from moment to moment. The sonar echolocation is a sound wave that is sent out, hits an object, I did all of that. The sun is broadcasting energy, consciousness, timelines, and possibilities. So the sun sends out timelines to you. Timelines bounce off of you. Possibilities bounce off of you. And then time flows back to the sun. And the sun is like, oh, look at those interesting events that just happened. That's from what I sent out, was experienced and bounced back and reflected back from the experiencers in the material world. And then now I have a viewpoint or a sense of the landscape or the world, of the picture of reality of what I'm creating as the sun. I'm speaking as the sun in this speech. When a living being ingests and absorbs that light, information, or consciousness and raises it to the level of higher consciousness and sends that consciousness back to the sun via clear broadcasting, clear meditation, and living as a clear conduit in touch with one's infinity timeline and in perfect alignment with these higher commands, the consciousness is being reflected back. That's when you're completely in the moment now. You're focusing on the moment now, and you're not anticipating the future, and you're not clinging to the past, and you're feeling all of your senses of the moment now. That is when you are giving a real-time broadcast back to the sun and the stars and saying, here's what is going on here. That is the value and the beauty of each one of you as individual apertures of consciousness, or facets of a giant jewel or a giant crystalline structure. Each one of you is a facet. Each one of your viewpoints is valued and hugely valuable. We need to know what is happening from your viewpoint and send it back to the sun and tell the sun what is happening. I already talked about the energy that rises up the spine. It is similar or intertwined with sexuality and orgasm, but not exactly the same as it. And the energetics of what is happening is similar to what happens in orgasm or sexual pleasure and satisfaction, but it is basically, it can happen spontaneously in meditation. Energy that rises up the pathway of your spine and then comes out the top of your head and is rebroadcast back to the sun, or sun gazing in a loop. In sun gazing, you take in that energy, you breathe it in, breathe it in, breathe it in, you fill up the chalice of your being all the way up to the top of your head, and then you connect again. Send it all back. It is all one big giant loop. And I'm moving fast because we're heading into, we're always going to go into overtime, it just happens. What the sun does is calculate the difference between the two waves that it sends out. It sends, I'm the sun, I'm sending this out, then this is bouncing back to me, and I'm going to calculate the difference between what I have sent out and what I have received. Is there a time lag? Did it come from a slightly different direction? Did it change in its quality, or how much energy was there? All of those are valuable pieces of information to the sun, which wants to know what is going on out here, down here, in there. Submerged in time is a better way of saying it. When the body is stimulated in the red chakra, energy flows up the spine and through all of the chakras, and then exits through the crown, connecting with the infinity source. This is one way the energy flows back to the sun. This is all really, really different in terms of teaching than the traditional human model of male-female reproduction or sexual commodification. Just have to say that. This is about the expression of that energy and that pleasurable energy connection as being something that is divine, partnerless, and a part of your communication structure with the sun and the stars. So again, it has nothing at all to do with a huge burden of shame that is placed upon feelings that are sexual feelings or orgasmic feelings, or whether they are done on your own, or whether they happen spontaneously, or whether they happen due to you manually stimulating yourself, or whether they happen spontaneously due to sitting in certain body postures and breathing exercises. All of that is a culturalization, and I would encourage you to put it by the wayside. What really matters is that your physical body presence is divine. The stimulation of the senses of your physical body presence leads to that energy being ramped up and energized and going back to the sun, and that's a divine action. And to divorce yourself from all of the cultural precepts, shame, guilt, and judgments that have been placed upon that activity, because you're literally talking to yourself when you do it. You're like a neurological neuron signal, like sending that back to yourself as a brain. But then there are all of these burdensome judgments that are placed upon there. That is called building a rainbow bridge. Rainbow bridge comes in two directions. Rainbow bridge from up there, down here, or into here, or from higher dimension into lower dimension, or from higher frequency into lower frequency, and then from the lower frequency back up to the higher frequency, raising that energy, broadcasting it back up to the thing that and sent it out to you. And it is also timelines, possibilities, and probabilities, as well as information about stimuli of the world around you. You're taking the thoughts and emotions of having a physical body and refining it and sending it back upward to the source. You make a perfect loop. It is a perpetual motion machine. It is frictionless and eternal. And again, none of this has to do with imprisonment, because that's the freedom, as Angel said so beautifully. Oh no, sorry, Angela, not Angel, even though they're both two beautiful people in our class. Freedom means you don't get stuck someplace. You are free to move as you are supposed to move. And that is what my Aurora Collective is all about, fostering freedom of consciousness. And that is why I'm here, because for a long time, consciousness was not free to move. We're getting into the singularity. I've already done a lot of part 2, so don't worry, I'll go fast. The singularity is the end result of a stretching of the extremely stretchy fabric of the cosmos. Fabric of the cosmos, infinitely heavy bowling ball of consciousness, stretching that fabric out like this. An infinite amount of stretching is the singularity. At the level of DNA, on a tiny molecular level, you're built entirely out of torus shapes, which each have a singularity at the center. I already told you that, stacked up donuts. At the center of Earth, there's singularity. At the center of Earth's, of the sun's heliosphere, there's singularity. The sun's heliosphere encompasses the entire solar system, including all of the planetary structures and their orbits. The sun also has a singularity at its center. This comes into play in future teachings about sun gazing and creating the ephemeral bridge, between yourself and the sun, some of which I've already gone through in the level 2 lessons for this ongoing semester. The galactic plane I show you in the recorded levels lessons is a torus shape, and it has at its center the singularity, the supermassive black hole, which is a hugely gravitational object. I know I'm going very fast, like there's a lot of deep stuff in here. I could spend a lot of time on it. The key to understanding all of this is that each one of these singularities is like a door, and each person has a doorway inside of them. Each chakra, each planet, each star, each galaxy, these are all doorways to infinity. There are many, many doorways that open into the same room, and that room is called infinity. And there is literally no distance between the doorway that is inside of you and the doorway that is elsewhere. Your doorway is not far away from, it has no space between you and the sun. There is no time between you and the sun. There is no time between you and the galactic center. You have a doorway inside of yourself, like this is my singularity printed on my dress right here. And there is no time space between me and the center of the galaxy, which according to linear space is millions and billions of miles away. But there is no space between us. I'm there right now. This is why when people say, Aurora, and you're collective, and where do you come from? I'm like, I don't come from, I'm there right now. I am co-inhabiting. I'm at that level of reality, and I'm at this level of reality at the same time. This is why I also talk about past and concurrent lives, parallel lives. You're in Atlantis and you are here at the same time. You are not leading linear lives, one than other. You are experiencing them at the same time. Future progeny, things that you give birth to and that go off and then evolve and become different types of space races, you're not first here, then there. You're experiencing both of them at the same time. You are yourself now, and you are yourself as a higher, wiser, ascended master, higher self, completely evolved individual at the same time. The doorway inside of you and the doorway inside of yourself as a higher state, coherent light being, ascended master individual, or a different type of structure than this physical structure, or where you came from as a Lemurian or an Atlantean or a speck of consciousness living in a protoplasm. There's a doorway inside of each one of you, and there's no space and no time in between all of those levels of self. You are experiencing all of them at the same time. Wow. This, what I'm talking about, is a level of consciousness and a level of being. The doorway or the limitation, the separation to be in that state is simply your own level of wisdom and comprehension and how much you can do yoga of the perception. You just need to stretch to be able to be like, I'm going to have to do the splits. Like I have to stretch all the way out here to encompass that all of that is me. All of that is me. And that's what I talk about the wah-wah-wah. Pull back, pull back, pull back further, everyone. Pull back further. Wah-wah-wah-wah. It's all you. The life cycle of a star, that's the teaching that I did last week in the level 2 stuff. Nebula, baby star is a nebula, coalesces together, becomes a light emitter, emits, is a portal of light, has a lifespan, then eventually can't expand anymore. The forces of gravitational crushing inwards pull everything inwards, and the star backflips into itself and draws back in like a fishing line all of the stuff that it sent out in terms of timelines, sending out timelines and possibilities all during my lifespan, and then bringing it all back in, bring it all back in, bring it all back in. And that is what the experience of a black hole is like. Not death at all, but a retraction of all of that expansion and an endless stretching of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness into that endless singularity point that is actually a doorway into another level of being, that is a portal, that is the birth of a photon out of a different star. You go in, and at a certain point you come out, because this is not only, the destination, it is also the source. You came out of here. Mommy, daddy, where did I come from? You came from here. You came from here, and now you're here, and then you're going to come back here and be here again. And then when you return here, then you're going to come back out here again. Beautiful time looping in freedom. A black hole as an infinite stretching. Light enters and continues on its journey infinitely. Light enters into the stretchy fabric of the black hole and keeps going on its journey infinitely. It doesn't stop. But that idea or the refinement of your consciousness is to understand that at a certain point, like you're diving in, or I'm backflipping like a swan dive. I'm backflipping into reality, and you're backflipping endlessly. But then at a certain point, your backflip is actually a front flip, and you're a photon being emitted by a star. And that's you coming into being. And that is beautiful. Stars as a portal through which consciousness is going on its journey. Consciousness comes out of the star, but consciousness also goes into the star. This is what it is like when I talk about my Aurora Collective traveling on a network of consciousness that is the higher dimensional neurological structure coming into and out of stars. This is going to get deep, guys. Stars are a portal through which consciousness is going on its journey. The sun is an amazing living consciousness creature. More light equals more consciousness. Boom. Accrete more light. Eat more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches consciously. Accrete more light. The sun has eaten so many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches consciously that it is enormous, not fat, but huge, and has an enormous amount of mass and coherence of holding all of that mass together. More light equals more consciousness. The sun is an amazingly, strongly conscious, present being. The sun is the largest light body you could imagine. It's like the biggest ascended master. Light bodies and coherent light bodies are ascended masters. The sun is the largest light body you could imagine. It is the definition of consciousness, sending off emanations of consciousness, which are then reflected back to it like a bat in a sonar, and receiving the biofeedback from the big toe of you, or an eye or sensory apparatus knows what it is looking at. The sun is an eye and it is looking at you, and you are the eyeball retina cell sending that information back to the sun. The amount of awareness it accrues as it experiences emissions and emitting over millions of years. That's what the sun is doing. It's sending out timelines, possibilities, and probabilities, and the sun is becoming wiser and more conscious and growing more and accreting more light in its own light body through all of these amazing possibilities and probabilities that it's sending out to us. It's like, here's something that can happen. And then it happens to you in your life. And then we reflect it back to the sun. And that's like, the sun is eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it gets incredibly smart by doing all of this. The sun becomes incredibly conscious. It becomes incredibly well-versed or experienced in all of these different levels of human experience, but also microbial experience, dolphin experience, redwood tree experience, everything experience, electrons, pure light, neutrinos. The sun is so wise. It is experiencing all of those levels of organistic, creative creature beingness and integrating it all into the white light of unity consciousness. What is it like to be a mineral? What is it like to be a photon? What is it like to be a human? What is it like to be, or I always say, a redwood tree or a butterfly or a whale? Last night, whales were in my dreams. What is it like to be any of these types of creatures? The sun knows. The sun has emanated all these things. The sun did all of this just on one planet. What is it like to live as a gaseous emanation from your anus? I made a joke. We need a little bit of lightheartedness. Okay, good. But now back to seriousness. When it becomes a black hole, a sun, its consciousness does not end. It backflips back into itself, death as a journey and not the end. This goes to the idea of, my little time vortex, and of course the ascend path of ascended mastery and going back to the central core timeline. But just to understand that if you die, you're not a failure. Stars die, stars are on their journey, stars die and become black holes, and that they are on their journey of consciousness too. And I talked about how to die well and the idea of crossing the duat and non-identification with certain ego temporal aspects of thought structure that are not the real eternal version of you. Death as a journey and not as the end. At the end, when the sun becomes a black hole, that is not the end of the journey of consciousness, but consciousness is moving into a new form, big. When you die, if you die a physical death, you're not at the end of your journey, but your consciousness is moving into a new form. And what happens? You stop being a human and maybe you get born as a whale or as a photon or as a mitochondria, I don't know, as a tiny little thing, as an amoeba. How does the black hole at the center of the galaxy relate to the singularity at the center of the sun? Boom. I'm going to read that one again. How does the black hole at the center of our galaxy relate to the singularity at the center of the sun? It has to do with the journey of consciousness and the broadcasts that come from the galactic center, all doorways to the same infinity, which are necessarily traveling at a speed of light, at a speed that is greater than the speed of light, or traveling via a higher dimension. Galactic center, here's the portal in the sun. Instead of going across here very, very fast, fold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, I go from here to here instantaneously. Light equals information that goes from the source to the source. Hi, I'm the source. Hi, I'm also the source. There is no time space between us. I am the source and I am the source. This is profound. When you start to really embody this, you start to become the flying rainbow lasagna shape. You become a quantum object. Blah, blah, blah. I got all these analogies. Folding the flat plane, we already did that. We can be directly connected beyond the limitation of the speed of light, directly to the center of the sun and directly to the center of the galaxy. And this is what it's like when you start to get really fast, when you start to level up, When you start to become part of higher dimensional galactic society, you're moving at a faster rate. This is why I say if you meet some kind of extraterrestrial presence, you don't just have to be like, hi, I come in peace. Like, where do you come from? You have to say, how fast are you vibrating? When do you come from? That it's a different thought structure because some beings are vibrating at an incredibly fast rate, and that they recognize that there is no space and no time between all these different seemingly spread out, effulgently flowing aspects of self. There is no time, quote unquote, that it takes for consciousness or light to travel between these singularity points. We can be directly connected beyond the limitations of space and light, speed of light, directly to the center of the sun or the center of the galaxy. Connect with the sun right now, instantaneously, non-locally. It exists within you. That's big. You can do sun gazing by connecting to the sun that is directly inside of you right now. You don't have to wait 8 minutes for that light to reach your eyeball. You can get that light directly inside of you right now through the singularity that you have inside of you and that the sun also connects inside of it. Brief aside, the teachings of Terence McKenna, the singularity and time. Terence McKenna is no longer alive. Amazing person, great teacher, was alive on Earth, until like maybe about 10 years or so ago, and wrote a computer algorithm called Time Wave Zero. It's a little bit of an aside, which is why I might not do a whole presentation on it, but it is enough to say that there are interesting algorithmic fractal harmonics through time that he explored, and he explored this also as expression of Mayan wisdom at a time when the Mayan calendar had not yet been translated, and that I recorded this lesson for this class in 2013, shortly after 2012, when it was very relevant to know about all these things, having just gone through a timeline portal, having just gone through what would be considered a death journey. All right, just all of that, all of my stuff about Terence McKenna as being condensed down into this brief sentence that December 21st, 2012, all humans and all the life on Earth here did go through a portal of consciousness. You did not die a physical death, but you did change your life trajectory, came out the other side, and the singularity, you went into the singularity, essentially. But when you go into the singularity, when you go into the singularity, you die. This is big. When you go into the singularity, you experience a death journey. That is the death of the physical ego. It is a redefinition of self. The way that my beings travel, how experts do star travel, is not to get into a clank metal spaceship, dig a bunch of ore out of the ground, put it in a hot furnace, smelt it, make a skin, make like a metallic cylindrical object, that whole rigmarole. No, that is not what we do. We fly on wings of pure consciousness and we go through the portals that are in the sun and the stars. But when you do that, what you are is like an ice cube inside of a big giant glass of water. You're a coherent, solidified, unique individuality presence that then is also surrounded by an enormous sea of waveforms. This goes to the teaching that I gave you about how to die well and the idea of being a coherent light form or creating your raft, your sun bark, B-A-R-Q-U-E, from the ancient Egyptian idea of crossing the Duat, a consciousness-based vehicle of coherent light forms, your light body, that will carry you across this interdimensional journey space. Basically what happens when you go through the sun, you are bathed with enormous levels of consciousness and mental presence that are like waves crashing on the ocean. And you need to be incredibly coherent as to whom you are, your sense of self-identity, in order to not be washed away. And if you are fragmentary or self-contradictory or in conflict and illogical in many ways, then you don't have the integrity, tensile strength, and structure in order to be able to make it through that experience. My people and my collective travel through these neurological portals, through all these different star system and doorways of consciousness, knowing that we will die, but knowing that death is not the end, and knowing that the things that you let go of are the temporal ego, the temporary definition of self, the stuff that is not permanent and not eternal that you do not take with you, and knowing that we are perfectly structured to take with us all the stuff that is really, really important. So that's like saying I'm going to move house. going to change where I presently physically live, and I'm going to pack up everything that is important, that is the real me. But I'm going to leave this pair of socks, that does not matter. I'm going to leave this spaghetti strainer, that does not matter. None of this stuff matters. I'll get a new one on the other side. Do you get it? Some things don't matter, but some things really, really matter. In my life, I take my artwork with me. That really matters. I painted that painting. There's only one of it. That's coming with me no matter where I move. It's definition of self. I identify with that as self. My spatula, my spaghetti strainer, who in the world cares? I'll get a new one. It doesn't matter. It does not define me. The me-ness of me is not defined by my spaghetti strainer, my spatula, my area rug, or even my coffee maker. All of those things are easily replaceable items. In terms of your ego structure, some things are purely temporal. This is my hair, and this is my dress, and this is the stuff that I use to define myself while I'm here. But that is not my eternal self. That is not my unique energy signature. And when I go through the star portal, that is true consciousness traveling, I am not afraid. I am not in fear. I am a coherent light being that knows that I take with me everything that is the true eternal aspect of self. And I am not afraid to have the rest be left behind, washed away, diminished, diluted, or not come with me through that portal. However, I would, in whatever way I describe it with words here in this broadcast. The waves of currents of the ocean of consciousness, they wash away all that is not eternal. If you do not die well and but wait, I identify with that spaghetti strainer. That's who I really am, and I have to stay with it for forever. If you are identifying with your spatula, and your spatula is being literally washed away by the enormous pressures of time. Imagine of time as a fire hose or a pressure washer that is like it's scouring away all of the stuff that is not real and truthful and eternal. But you're like, wait, my spaghetti strainer, that's the real me. And you as consciousness are clinging to that thing. That is problematic, because that is what these fragmentary consciousnesses are doing on the membrane of death. And what they try to do is be like, no, don't put the fire hose of truth on me. Don't put the pressure washer of love on me, because I identify with all these temporal aspects of myself, and I don't want them to be washed away. So each one of you, be a strong warrior and be incredibly courageous and heart-centered on your journey. And don't be afraid to release and let go of the temporal aspects of self that are not truly you, even as you align with and fully are, connecting to the eternal aspects of self, who you really are as an eternal being, what defines you as an eternal being, beyond the mere accoutrements of your temporal ego, into the levels of who you are across lifespans, who you are across multiple parallel realities, who you are when you are a star, who you are when you are a galaxy. You're more than just a person that has an area rug or a spaghetti strainer. You're an eternal presence. And who and what is that presence, and defining and identifying with that. The reason for this is the singularity is a place of total improbability and total possibility. So just as there is E on one side and MC squared on the other side, there is also the sense of possibility versus probability. And the singularity is that place where all of these equations get squashed together, where possibility and probability become synonymous and on the same side of the equation, and the other side of the equation is infinity. And what happens is, at this singularity point, which we all went through together as a collective whole on December 21st, 2012, the moment of greatest improbability overlaps with the moment of total possibility. It is the least likely thing that will happen, the path of least likelihood. Totally improbable. It is also totally improbable to be born. To materialize matter, as Billy was asking, where does this matter come from? Which is the first, the chicken or the egg? How did we even get to be these prismatic, time refracting crystalline structures? Totally improbable event that is happening in terms of the birth of consciousness. Also overlapping with the moment of total possibility. Anything that can happen will happen. Everything that has happened is happening. Every single fold of this scarf is folded up, folded up, folded up into that little tiny place that is overlapping on that one spot. The least likely thing that can happen is happening at the singularity, and every single possible thing that can happen is happening at the singularity, and they both overlap. The moment of total improbability and the moment of total possibility. And out of that moment on December 21st, 2012, we went through the singularity. We had all of these overlapping time pathways, and then we emerged onto a new time pathway, into a new world. You are born into a new world. And total improbability equals high novelty. If you do the research on Terence McKenna and Time Wave Zero, he looked at algorithms of high versus low novelty, novelty being weird SHIT that can happen, unexpected stuff that can happen. Kind of like when I tell you about the improbability structure known as the flying rainbow lasagna. I just stretched my neck. That's what that was about. Flying rainbow lasagna as an object of extreme improbability, reaching a moment of total newness. Novelty and high novelty means reaching a moment of total newness, something that has never been experienced before. You can lasagna all the time. You can make these moments of improbability and high strangeness all the time, and I do, believe me. It is also infinity. It is also the presence of all possibilities. It's a nexus point from which all roads emerge. And this is freedom. This is how you can be like, not that I don't like, but let's say I want to change or transform my trajectory through time. I will go into this singularity structure. And from there, that's like the center that I can then choose any expanding, radiating pathway from in any world, in any direction. It's an amazing amount of freedom. It's a nexus where all of these timelines converge and then also emit from. So it's not just a flat plane, but it is spherical. Time is not just a flat plane, but it is spherical. And this is the stretching object that you get when you stretch out this spherical object. I already got this one, how experts do star travel. Not by traveling across vast interstellar spaces of space-time, point A to point B. That is not how my collective travels. We do not go from point A to point B by flying all the way across there in a clank metal spaceship. What we do use is a coherent light body. What we do is bend and fold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. What we do is travel on a network of light and consciousness that is also known as the stellar network or celestial network that is a greater neurology. Beings who have accreted light to the point of being made entirely of light, raised your matter up to the level of being a coherent light being. And you no longer have a density structure known as your physical body. Coherent light, light that can be surrounded by light when you enter the sun or the source. So all of this is also about getting your physicality matter to go faster and faster and faster, so that number one, when you are in the presence of the sun and the source, you don't get instantaneously vaporized, because you got to be moving faster. Like the double Dutch jump ropes are going really, 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 really fast. And you have to learn to move your feet really, 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 really fast so that you don't get tripped up on all of these things that are happening. And you do that with your physicality presence and your physical matter. And when you're moving that fast, you are also a coherent being. You have your own coherence, your own stick-togetherness. That's what good waffles do. They stick together. Another joke, lightheartedness. Your own coherence, sticking together, even amidst the oceans and enormous pressure waves of time crashing onto you, crash, time crashing onto you, crash. But if you are a coherent light being, you stay together even amidst all of this crashingness of the ocean waves crashing on top of you. Spoiler alert, you can become one of these coherent light beings. Spoiler alert again, it's inevitable. It's going to happen to you. You're in an inevitability particle. It's going to happen no matter what. Snap. Spoiler alert. Wait, I need to get back to my, you're interacting with beings of pure light right now that are yourself from the future. That is also not the future, but a concurrent time, because now you recognize the singularity inside of you is the same doorway to infinity that is inside of you, yourself as a higher self, ascended master self. There is no time between. There is no time. You can talk to yourself now, to yourself as an ascended master in what you would perceive as your future, but it's not your future, it's your concurrentness. You talk to yourself in your concurrentness, and you talk to yourself as the sun in your concurrentness. And you are doing this all through the singularity, or the doorway to infinity that is completely within you. You're looking for a being who has advanced in consciousness. Oh, okay, wait. Basically, okay, if a creature requires an external machine to fly through space, then they're not advanced and they probably shouldn't be flying through space. It's like needing training wheels to get somewhere. Like if you need training wheels to get somewhere, like you should just stay home. Stay home until you have got your crap together, and then you're ready to actually travel using your consciousness. But of course, a lot of these beings don't do that. Some of them are very naughty. So that's why I speak in that way. But what you are looking for when the beings that you wish to interact with are beings who have advanced their consciousness to the point that it goes into a black hole or singularity at the center of the galaxy and then exits the portal of the sun near the earth. This is the journey of consciousness, the journey of birth, and the journey of pure light. That's who you want to interact with, okay? I'll say it again. There are beings out there who are coherent light beings, who are not afraid to dive into a black hole like the one at the center of the galaxy and lose their meaningless accoutrements like their spatulas and their spaghetti strainers, but stay true in their eternal selves and be emitted through the portal that is at the center of a star like the sun and come out as pure light and then interact with you as pure light. That's what the Aurora Collective does. That's what I do. I stay my eternal self, lose the temporal stuff that doesn't really matter, or it's burned away, or it is lost in the journey. You get a new coffee maker, you get a new spatula, but those are the ones that have the wisdom and the value system that you actually want to interact with. Aurora, to go into the singularity is to die. Yes, to go into the singularity is to die, but this has nothing at all to do with self-destruction. It is about self-construction. It is the death of the temporal self and the ego, and it's the death of the form. But if you are a being of pure light and you are placed in a vessel of pure light, you maintain your individuality by maintaining your coherence within the larger ocean of waveform consciousness and time possibility. When you grow your light body, you are lining up all of your light waves and thoughts so that when you drop your physical body, your thoughts or your light is still coherent. So this is what I'm talking about. At a certain point, you transcend or transform the physicality presence, the red level of beingness, and you are only the non-physicality presence, however that happens for you on your individual journey, but you are coherent enough, stick together-y enough to be able to stick together amidst the power washer of time presence. You will become a light being submerged within a field of light, what the journey into the singularity is like. This is what I'm trying to say. So I don't want anyone who dies to be like, oh no, I'm a failure, wah, wah, like now I'm just gonna be stuck on the membrane of death. No, what you need to do is non-identify with your temporal ego self, continue on your journey and make it into that area that I highlighted as a place of pure love and above. That is what travels with you. Those are the eternal aspects of self. My artwork would be a consideration of something that is made of pure love and above. These are thought forms and identifications with the things that are important to you. Real love, that's what I'm trying to say. Real love comes with you. All of the other stuff does not come with you. The things that are lower mammalian emotions, your physicality presence, and even your intellectual cognitive thought processes. But your insight comes with you, and your throat and your heart and your divine connection comes with you. All of that stuff comes with you. You will be a light being submerged within a field of light, and that's what the journey into the singularity is like. The only things that travel at that level are made of unconditional love and higher. Lower aspects of self are bathed away like a power washer and cannot make it through that transformative portal. Do you understand? Go through a doorway. The doorway washes away the stuff that is temporary. It's not who you truly are in the long distance sense of beingness. Going through time wave 0, as we did in 2012 as a collective with all the converging timelines, we made it through the singularity. You did. And through the portal, and you now exist on a branching timeline that radiates outward from the singularity moment in the portal. That was a moment of complete novelty where every single timeline overlapped from every direction and all coincided in that moment. Real star travel from a higher dimensional perspective is the linking up of the singularity at the center of you the Earth, the sun, and the galaxy all at once. You get it? All nested together like those amazing Ukrainian matrushka dolls, Russian dolls. You do not have to travel at all to get where you want to go. You do not have to hop in a vehicle to go somewhere else. Your presence, connected to the Earth, connected to the sun, connected to the galaxy, is the journey. Big, not jumping off on a giant rocket ship in a metal space can with, as I joke, your food mashed up in a toothpaste tube so that you can eat your food along the way. Very, very different experience. To travel through a star is to be reborn. To be reborn. You go into the star, you go on the stellar network, you release your ego identity of who you were, and you are reborn. And you get a new spaghetti strainer and a new area rug. Consciousness went into a black hole singularity and then came out through a sun emitter. You're getting it. Light ships, Aurora the light ship. Are we getting there? My higher consciousness collective is named Aurora, and I'm a light ship, okay? And you do not need like night vision goggles to see me. Like, I'm made of light. I'm very big. You can see me easily. Light ships that travel through the sun are made of non-physical energy presence, a time body, just like what surrounds you. Just like, I'll go briefly to this because I know we're almost at the end of this class. All of this stuff that surrounds you, all of this stuff around the anthropomorphic presence, that is what coherent light beings are made of. That is what light ships are made of. It's a field of individuals linked together, a grouping of beings who have cultivated their light bodies and their higher dimensional selves and are connected in a perfect crystalline grid in order to create a stability that we can then use to travel through space and time. That's my Aurora collective. I am jumping up not only to stretch, and I invite and encourage all of you to stretch as well, because I happen to have right here, because I have not put it up on the wall, organizing my space, this painting right here, where you can see all of these individual light beings within the overarching coherent structure of time. This is a light ship. This is a light ship, everyone. This is what it looks like. My dog got so excited because she heard me like jumping up and grabbing paintings. There, Cheeky came out because she's like, what's going on? Hi, come on over. She woke up from her little bed. That is a light ship. That is a coherent light ship. And this is my coherent light ship dog. Come here, girl. Good job. Good job. Oh. Yeah, coherent light ship. Billy's got to go. Thanks for a great lesson. I have to work now. Good day, everyone. Thank you. I know we are at the end of the recording, but you know we're getting there. Light ships that travel through the sun are made of non-physical energy presence. They're made of a time body. They're made of the energy presence that surrounds you. And you don't just travel along as one little, like, I'm like one little bird flying along. No, you fly like a beautiful flock, a flock of flying rainbow lasagnas. You fly with your beautiful team of coherent light beings all around you. And this is also, these are the beings, it's big, big, big. I don't want to skip over this. This is how higher dimensional ascended masters travel. And this is called a ship of the mind. It is a ship of consciousness, and it is based on unconditional love, the love tone, and that is the fuel, that is the gas that makes my car go. Love. All of these individual beings that are all loving one another, literally like a big giant harmonic presence, wah, 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 and everybody is loving one another. And that is literally what makes my Aurora collective move around through these star portals and move through times, the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. That's it. That's the everythingness that I really had to get to here. I'm almost at the end of my notes. Photons are being emanated from the galactic center through many star portals. Beings of light. Photons are beings of light. Photons are tiny interstellar vessels. They come from the galactic center. They come through all of the portals at the center of all of the suns, and then they come out through each individual sun into the world to interact with you. A re-examination of the eternal self versus the temporal ego. The eternal self goes through the sun, which is made up of eternal self. It is an undifferentiated self. Do you get it? You are the eternal self of the sun, and you go through the sun, which is yourself. And it is also eternal. The eternal aspect of you goes through the sun, which is also eternal. Eternal goes into eternal. Water goes into water. the same stuff. There's no distinction to be made between you, but there is a coherence where you're like, I'm this amount of stuff, and now I'm going into this amount of stuff, and now I'm going to go through here and be a part of this. But in unity consciousness, it's eternal self, it's eternal stuff. This is big. Undifferentiated self goes through the other side of the singularity, and you emerge still as the eternal self. And it's a cleansing and a birthing process. This is also very big because we talk about like those pesky occupiers of the interstices, and we don't like them very much, and blah, 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 and these fragmentary consciousnesses and stuff that is stuck on the membranes of time. Well, guess what? When you go through the star portal, when you dive into infinity, those fragmentary consciousnesses and unhealed aspects of self do not come with you. They do not have a coherence. They are temporal, and they do not make the journey. And in many ways, this is a cleansing and a renewal. My collective goes through a star portal and comes out cleansed and renewed, not with any of the, no Klingons around your anus. I'm just making jokes, I'm very silly, but no pooties, no Klingons, nothing that is this debris that would be considered the debris, detritus of consciousness, fragments, fragmentary things, things that need to be healed. We talk a lot about that. We recognize that it exists, but when you go through this death process and you come out and emerge into a new level of reality, you emerge as your eternal self in a sea of eternal selfness of truth, not with any of these unhealed temporal aspects of self. They can't catch a ride. No hitchhikers. No hitchhikers, they will not be clinging to you. That's not how it works. So you emerge cleansed, and it is a birthing process. So that is very big. I hope that you're getting there. Amidst all of my silliness, I know I get very silly sometimes. This has everything to do with personal and planetary journey, a cleansing of earth consciousness, and not all of these aspects of reality that are distortions come through the portal. Not everything comes with you. So it's not just like getting rid of your spaghetti strainer or your salad fork, but it's kind of like getting rid of the salad fork of pain and identification with pain and trauma. That is not the eternal version of you and who and what you really are. What you're really believing behind is pain and suffering and profound trauma. Falsehoods dry up and fall away. Non-loving aspects of social structure and society that are harming humans and the planet. Get it? These things also fall away. And then you enter into a new space, the post-singularity space, an area of complete newness and novelty, a new opportunity to express that eternal truth and eternal self on a higher level. And it is analogous to what happens when an individual person dies. And then you go through a wormhole, but the lower aspects of temporal ego are shed and left behind, and consciousness then emerges into a new place, the individual consciousness on a death journey. You got it? The planetary consciousness coming through the singularity, the journey of a photon that enters a black hole and then is birthed again through the star emitter. I think that I have gotten everything. One more question is, how do you make a ship like this? By cultivating your consciousness, your mind, and by changing your ideas, and by beginning to make these connections between external and internal thought structures. The inside becomes the outside, and the outside becomes the inside. So you make a ship of mind by cultivating your mind and making sure that it is shaped exactly right with no internally conflicting illogicalisms. You have to have self-supportive statements, like I am this and these are all the supportive statements. This is truthful and here's all of my supportive statements. The things that fall away are lies and falsehoods because they're like struts or planks in a ship that don't actually connect. There's no structural strength if I just have like a board that goes like this and doesn't screw into anything, that doesn't connect to anything, and there's no bracing. It just, everything, it's like toothpicks. A giant wave comes along and it just crushes this stupid thing that's made out of toothpicks. And no offense, because I know that some people have been through a lot of trauma and I've had my experiences of trauma also, but the identity structures that are made out of trauma and suffering and pain and self-contradictory illogic are unintelligent, and they are like toothpicks, and they are shattered by the profound coherence of truth. Your true body is strong indestructible. And as those time waves come into you, they nourish and strengthen you. They don't crash you apart like you're made out of toothpicks, because you are actually well structured, where you're like, this thing connects to this thing, and then this thing connects to this thing, and all of these forces are balanced, and you have an inner logic and a balance of forces and a symmetry that makes everything stick together, and you become a coherent being, and you have been refined in this soul refinery process, or like the way that metal is forged in a forgery, in a forge like of, you know, hot metal creation. You get strong. We have gotten incredibly strong through this soul refinery. And then when it is time for you to swan dive, backflip into a black hole, go into a reality structure as a purely coherent light body, you're not going to be made out of toothpicks. You did the work, like you do in this class right now, of creating a coherency in your form and in your true identity. And you know who you truly are, and you know who you're truly not. And you let go of all the detritus and the stuff that you're truly not. You're like, toothpicks, get away. Break the toothpicks. Yeah, that's not really a part of me. It broke that easily. But these parts of me that are really true and lasting, those are the real parts of me.
The snowman went rolling home.
Ah, I love it, Christina.
He played three.
Nice. She's singing to her little kid, but I think that's an appropriate song. We're about to end the recording. Yes, you make a ship of consciousness by becoming a coherent light being, and you do it singing, walking along with others. Yes. That's it, everybody. More about connecting to the source within you, connecting to the sun, using the flying rainbow lasagna, oscillating the singularity within a context. All of this will be coming. I know this was a very, very long, epic presentation. If you have any questions, now is a good time for questions. If not, I will end the recording. I do have my next, I call it jokingly, my angelic assignments to go on. Oh, Angela says, beautiful, thank you. You are very welcome. Very welcome, everyone. Yes, this is a good one, because it's really all about an empowerment teaching and understanding that death is not the end. Your journey through a star portal is like a cleansing and a rebirthing, and that I've done it very many times, and that it is something that is not to be feared at all, and it is an incredibly positive thing. So I will end the recording on that note. Thank you.